What if you weren't just living your life, but performing it? What if right now, as you breathe, as you blink, as you drift into sleep, there are eyes, unseen, unblinking, fixed on you? The idea is unsettling, maybe even absurd, and yet it lingers. Not just in myths or conspiracy theories, but in science, psychology, and philosophy. So tonight, let's sit with that question. What if we are being watched already? Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you lying in bed, lights dim, phone warm in your hand? Are you out on a late walk, headphones tucked in, the world whispering around you? Or are you sneaking a listen at work, hiding curiosity in plain sight? Wherever you are, pause for a moment and notice the setting. Your room, your breath, the feeling of being here. If you enjoy journeys like this, slow, thoughtful, sometimes a little eerie, I'd be grateful if you tapped like or subscribed. It helps this little island of wonder drift to others who might be searching too. And now, let's slip into the question together. The thought of being watched is ancient. It is as old as firelight, as old as the first nights when humans looked up at the stars and wondered who or what looked back. Across cultures, across millennia, the same suspicion emerges. We are not alone in our solitude. Whether you call it gods, spirits, ancestors, extraterrestrials, or future minds, someone is out there. And more than that, someone may already be here, watching. Psychologists have long noted how sensitive we are to the gaze of others. Even without sight, we feel it. Studies show that when people sense they are being observed, even unconsciously, their behavior shifts. They act with more restraint, more caution, as though an invisible judge hovers nearby. This phenomenon is sometimes called the watching eyes effect. Place an image of a pair of eyes above a donation jar and people give more. Place the same eyes above a cafeteria trash bin and people litter less. The implication is unsettling. Simply the suggestion of a gaze changes us. Now extend that to the idea that such a gaze is not just implied, but real. If we are being watched, not just by neighbors or cameras, but by something greater, what would that mean for who we are? Science, too, hints at strange connections between observation and existence. In quantum mechanics, particles behave differently when measured. The act of watching collapses probabilities into certainties. At the smallest scales of reality, observation seems to shape the outcome. Physicists argue about what this means, but the metaphor is powerful. If looking can change the universe, then perhaps the universe is shaped, in part, by being looked at. And if that's true, who or what is looking? Of course, most of us dismiss the feeling of being watched as paranoia, a trick of the mind. Yet the human story is drenched in watchfulness. Religions speak of omniscient gods who see all. Myths describe beings descending from the sky to survey and guide. Even in secular modern life, cameras dot every street, satellites circle overhead, algorithms monitor our clicks and scrolls. The sense of being watched has gone from suspicion to certainty. But the question tonight is not about other humans watching humans. It's about whether something beyond us, outside our frame, already has its gaze fixed upon us. Imagine, just for a moment, that this planet is less a home and more a stage. The forests and mountains are the set, the oceans the backdrop, the stars the lights above, and we, humanity, are the actors. Who sits in the audience? Who waits in the dark, silent and attentive, as we live out our dramas? Is it alien civilizations, curious about our rise? Is it future humans, peering back through time as if watching an old recording? Is it a consciousness woven into the universe itself, experiencing through us? Each possibility is unnerving, and each feels strangely plausible. The idea of surveillance is usually tied to power. To watch is to control, to know, to predict. If we are being watched, what is the purpose? To guide us, to study us, to judge us? Or are we simply entertainment, a curiosity unfolding in real time? Some scientists have even proposed the zoo hypothesis, that advanced civilizations know of us but choose only to observe, like visitors at an interstellar zoo, careful not to disrupt the animals inside. If so, our lives might be less about freedom and more about enclosure. But here's the twist that keeps people awake at night. What if the watchers aren't out there at all? What if they're in here, woven into consciousness, part of the reason we even suspect them in the first place? The feeling of being observed may not be a delusion. It may be a signal, a whisper from within that says, "You are not alone." Tonight we begin to follow that whisper, through myths and ruins, through telescopes and theories, through psychology and physics. Each step will circle back to the same quiet but insistent question: what if we are being watched already? And if we are, what does that mean for everything we believe about existence? To be watched is to be altered. That is the unsettling truth hiding in plain sight. Even if the watcher never interferes, never speaks, never touches, the simple act of being observed changes everything. Think of a child in a classroom who behaves differently the moment the teacher walks in. Think of a person alone in their home who suddenly straightens their posture when a window is left open. Watching transforms action into performance. Life becomes theatre, and if we are being watched already, constantly, invisibly, then who we are may not be who we think we are. We may be characters written for an unseen audience. Psychologists have studied this in detail. They call it the social monitoring system, the part of our brain tuned to reputation, evaluation, and gaze. From an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense. In small tribes, survival depended not only on hunting and gathering, but on cooperation. Being seen meant being judged, and being judged meant either belonging or exile. Those who ignored the gaze of others risked banishment, and banishment meant death. Over generations, humans evolved hypersensitivity to the eyes of others. A glance across the fire was enough to trigger shame, pride, guilt, or joy. Our nervous systems learned to shape themselves around attention. To be watched was to be safe or to be doomed. Now expand that instinct to the cosmic scale. If we sense being watched, perhaps it is not only paranoia, but a deep ancient algorithm firing within us. Maybe the suspicion of observers above, whether gods in the sky, spirits in the forest, or aliens among the stars, is the echo of that survival mechanism. We cannot help but imagine eyes where there are none, because for most of our history, missing a gaze meant danger. Even when we are alone, we feel it, the prickling at the back of the neck, the urge to turn around. Often nothing is there. But what if sometimes something is? Consider how religions are built around this very principle. A God who sees everything ensures moral order. Even when no human is present, you are still accountable. The eyes of heaven are always open. The Quran says, "Not a leaf falls without being known." The Bible speaks of an all-seeing eye. Hindu scriptures describe deities who see through countless forms. The comfort and terror are the same. You are never alone. Every act, every thought, every secret is illuminated in an eternal gaze. Faith itself becomes a response to surveillance. In the modern world, we replicate this pattern with technology. Surveillance cameras line streets, recording faces even when no one watches the feeds. Satellites orbit above, capturing entire cities in a single frame. Online, algorithms track our movements, clicks, and purchases, building ghostly profiles more detailed than diaries. We live in a perpetual panopticon. Philosopher Michel Foucault described the panopticon as a prison design where one guard can watch many prisoners, though the prisoners never know when they are observed. The uncertainty makes them police themselves. That is the power of the gaze. It creates self-regulation, obedience without force. Our societies are built upon it. But again, what if the principle goes higher? What if the panopticon isn't just human-made, but cosmic? Suppose advanced beings, whether alien, divine, or post-human, observe us through means we cannot detect. Suppose they too use the uncertainty. We never know if the eyes are on us, so we shape ourselves as if they always are. Morality, law, etiquette, all responses to the suspicion of observation. Our civilization itself might be a performance staged for watchers beyond. The question then becomes, why? If we are watched, what purpose does it serve? Is it to test us? To measure whether humans, given freedom, can still create order? Is it to guide us subtly, nudging us toward cooperation, innovation, or compassion? Or is it entertainment, a drama unfolding across centuries, streamed live to an audience far from Earth? The possibilities are as unnerving as they are endless. And yet, being watched is not only a burden, it is also a source of meaning. Many of us crave attention. We long to be noticed, acknowledged, seen. To be invisible feels like erasure. To be observed feels like proof we exist. I see you, we say, and it means you are real to me. If unseen watchers exist, perhaps their gaze is not judgment but validation. Perhaps the eyes on us are the reason we endure, the reason we create art, the reason we look back up at the stars. Because deep down, we want to be worth watching. So tonight, as you settle into stillness, consider the double-edged sword of observation. It shapes us, controls us, terrifies us, but it also defines us. Without an audience, there is no performance. Without being seen, perhaps there is no self. The question of whether we are being watched already is not only about the universe, it is about us. Because even if no eyes are fixed upon us from above, we have already built those eyes into ourselves. We are watchers and the watched, prisoners and guards, actors and audience all at once. And maybe, just maybe, that was the design from the beginning. In physics, observation is not just a metaphor, it is a force. The act of watching changes reality itself, or at least that is how it seems when we peer into the quantum world. And if the universe behaves differently under observation, then the question of being watched already takes on an entirely new weight. Because what if observation is not only a matter of psychology or myth, but a fundamental rule of existence? The story begins with an experiment so strange it has haunted science for more than a century. The double-slit experiment. Take a beam of light, or even tiny particles like electrons, and pass them through two narrow slits onto a screen. If no one measures them, they behave like waves, spreading out, overlapping, creating interference patterns, like ripples on water. But the moment we place a detector to watch which slit they pass through, the pattern collapses. The electrons no longer act like waves. They behave like particles, as if they know they are being observed. This is not a matter of faulty equipment. It has been tested again and again, and the outcome remains the same. Without observation, matter exists in a haze of possibilities. With observation, it locks into place. To be watched is to be defined. Some physicists call this the observer effect. Others prefer to say measurement collapses the wave function. But the philosophical shadow is darker. If particles respond to being watched, then what does that say about the universe? Who or what is the ultimate observer? One interpretation, known as the Copenhagen interpretation, says particles do not have definite states until measured. Observation is what creates reality as we know it. Another, the many worlds interpretation, says every possible outcome happens, splitting into parallel universes. But even there, the act of observing decides which branch we experience. In both cases, consciousness seems intertwined with the fabric of existence. It is as though the universe is not fully real until it is seen. That raises the unsettling question. Has it always been watched? If so, by whom? By us, as conscious beings looking at it now? By every living eye that has ever opened on this planet? Or by something greater, something outside, something that observes even when no human instruments are near? Some philosophers propose that the universe requires a cosmic observer, a gaze so vast that it holds everything in place. Without it, reality would dissolve back into probabilities. We exist because we are seen. Skeptics argue that it is not consciousness itself that matters, but interaction. Any detector, any physical system that interacts with particles forces them into definite states. In this view, the universe is watched by itself. Rocks, atoms, radiation all participate in a web of observation. But the language of watching lingers, because the effect is the same. Particles behave differently when something takes notice. The act of being registered changes them. The implications for us are staggering. If reality depends on observation, then to live is to be constantly measured into existence. Our presence as conscious beings may not be incidental. Perhaps we are part of the machinery of the cosmos, eyes and minds ensuring that the universe remains stable by perceiving it. And if that is true, then being watched is not just paranoia, it is necessity. Watching is what keeps everything from falling apart. Yet the suspicion grows stranger. If observation shapes reality, then who shapes us? Are we too being collapsed into certainty by a gaze beyond? If humanity feels watched, it may not be mere myth or psychology. It may be physics itself whispering through us. Existence requires witnesses. Perhaps that is why so many traditions speak of cosmic eyes, of gods or spirits who see all. Perhaps they are not metaphors at all, but ancient intuitions of a truth science is only beginning to uncover. Tonight, as you rest and imagine, consider this. Every particle in your body, every atom in your room, dances between uncertainty and certainty. The moment they are observed, they choose. And if we are being watched already by the universe, by unseen intelligences, by something woven into reality itself, then every choice we make, every breath we take, may not just be ours. It may be part of a performance written in physics, unfolding under a gaze we cannot escape. If the universe is so vast, why is it so quiet? This is the riddle that has haunted astronomers for decades. Billions of galaxies, billions of stars, billions of planets circling them. By all calculations, the cosmos should be teeming with life. Intelligent civilizations should have arisen countless times. And yet, when we listen, we hear nothing. No signals, no greetings, only silence. This is the paradox of Fermi, named after the physicist who once asked, simply, "Where is everybody?" The paradox takes many forms. Some suggest that intelligent life is rare, that Earth may be one of the few havens where consciousness evolved. Others argue the opposite, that life is common, but civilizations collapse before they can reach the stars. Still others say they are out there, but they avoid us. And this last possibility ties directly into our question tonight. What if we are already being watched? Imagine advanced civilizations scattered across the galaxy, old enough to have mastered travel or communication across light years. They could have colonized entire clusters of stars. They could send signals so powerful we could never miss them. But instead, they remain silent. Why? One unsettling answer is the zoo hypothesis. It suggests that they know we are here, but choose not to contact us. Like biologists studying animals in the wild, they observe us without interfering, careful not to disturb the natural course of our development. To them, Earth is less a planet and more a preserve. Humanity lives in an enclosure without realizing it. The silence could also be deliberate concealment. Maybe the galaxy is full of civilizations, but each hides from the others, fearing predators. Broadcasting signals would be like shouting in a dark forest. You never know who else might be listening. If that is true,
then Earth's own radio transmissions, which have been leaking into space for a century, are dangerous lanterns in the night. We may already have drawn attention to ourselves, and perhaps someone has answered, not with a greeting, but with surveillance. Astronomers have searched for evidence of this. Projects like SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, have scanned the skies for decades, listening for patterns in the static. So far, the results are inconclusive. A handful of strange signals, like the famous "wow" signal detected in 1977, sparked excitement but never repeated. Officially, we have found nothing. Unofficially, some scientists wonder if that nothing is itself an answer. Maybe the signals are there, but hidden. Maybe they are encoded in ways we cannot yet decode. Maybe they are directed at us, but designed to look like noise until we are ready to understand. The silence might not mean absence. It might mean restraint.
Think of a parent watching a child from across the playground, present, attentive, but silent. The child believes they are free, but every stumble, every decision is quietly monitored. If advanced beings are watching us, perhaps they believe that contact now would disrupt us. Maybe they wait for us to mature, to reach a threshold of technology or wisdom. Until then, silence is their gift. And yet, silence can be suffocating. We look into the night sky and ache for connection. We point our telescopes outward, but we may have the equation backwards. Perhaps the watchers look inward. Perhaps Earth is already catalogued, studied, measured. Our broadcasts, our architecture, our history, all archived in databases we will never see. And maybe, somewhere in the vast dark, a decision waits, to leave us be, or to reveal themselves. The paradox of Fermi is usually framed as a problem, why we have not heard from others. But tonight, let's reframe it as a clue. The quiet may not be emptiness, it may be watchfulness. The stars may not be silent because they are empty, but because they are listening. And if that is true, then the question, where is everybody, has a simple, unnerving answer. They are here. They always have been. Watching. When we imagine searching for life beyond Earth, we often picture giant dishes pointed toward the stars, listening for whispers in the cosmic static. And that image is not far from the truth. For decades, projects under the umbrella of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, have scanned the heavens with radio telescopes, sifting through endless noise in hopes of finding a signal that is not random, not natural, but intentional. The idea is simple. If intelligent beings exist, they might try to communicate by sending signals across space. Radio waves are cheap, fast, and capable of traveling vast distances. A single powerful broadcast could be detectable across the galaxy. So SETI listens, and listens, and listens. What it finds most of the time is ordinary. Pulsars ticking like clocks, quasars roaring from the distant universe, the hiss of cosmic background radiation left over from the Big Bang. Yet, every so often, something strange appears. In 1977, astronomer Jerry Amon, working with the Big Ear Radio Telescope in Ohio, saw a burst of signal so powerful and so narrow that it immediately stood out. He circled the data on the printout and wrote a single word beside it. Wow. For decades, people have debated what it was. A passing satellite, a natural source, or something else entirely. No one has ever explained it fully. And, more importantly, it never repeated. The sky, it seems, teases us with possibilities and then returns to silence. But silence may not mean absence. Some scientists have suggested that if we are being watched, the signals we receive might be deliberately disguised. Think of it as a test. Perhaps the watchers embed messages inside patterns we dismiss as noise, waiting to see if we are clever enough to decode them. Or perhaps the signals are tuned to frequencies or methods we do not yet know how to perceive. To a Stone Age human, a Wi-Fi router would be invisible. To us, perhaps alien communication is equally undetectable. There is another possibility. What if the signals are one way? Maybe we are not meant to reply. Imagine we are part of an experiment. The watchers send broadcasts not to start a conversation, but to measure our reactions. They release hints into the void and observe how we respond. Do we panic? Do we dismiss it? Do we chase the signal with more advanced instruments? Our curiosity itself becomes the data. SETI researchers often speak of the cosmic haystack. Finding a signal is like searching for a needle, except the haystack is enormous. Frequencies range from kilohertz to gigahertz. Signals can be continuous or pulsed, narrow or wide, and we have barely searched a fraction of it. To say there is no signal out there is like scooping a cup of water from the ocean and declaring there are no whales. The truth is, we have hardly begun. And yet, what if the watchers do not want to be found in this way? What if their observation is closer, quieter, hidden not in the sky, but here on Earth? Reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, strange craft moving beyond the limits of our technology, stir speculation. Perhaps the watchers do not need to broadcast across the galaxy. Perhaps they are already among us, their surveillance local, precise, intimate. The search for signals may be missing the point because the gaze is already here. Still, there is something poetic about humanity listening. Night after night, telescopes turn their ears upward, straining for whispers. It is a form of prayer, even for the secular, a hope cast into the dark. Let us not be alone. Whether the answer comes as silence, as noise, or as a sudden burst of something undeniable, the act itself defines us. We are the species that listens, and perhaps somewhere in that act of listening, the watchers see what they need to see. They measure our patience, our persistence, our hunger for connection. So, the next time you hear static on a radio, the faint hiss between stations, consider that hidden within it could be a message. Not a greeting, not instructions, but a signature. We are here. We are watching. Long before telescopes, before satellites, before the hum of radio signals filled the sky, humanity already carried the suspicion of being watched. It is written into our oldest stories. Ancient civilizations across the world, separated by oceans and centuries, told strikingly similar tales of beings who descended from above, observed humanity, and shaped its path. Whether framed as gods, spirits, or teachers, these figures were not simply part of the world. They looked down upon it. They watched. Take the Sumerians, among the first civilizations to record their myths on clay tablets over 5,000 years ago. They spoke of the Anunnaki, deities who came from the heavens and guided the creation and progress of humanity. These beings were not just distant figures in the sky. They were active, involved, watchful. Kings claimed descent from them, as if rulership itself required not only human lineage, but divine surveillance. The Anunnaki were not merely gods of storms or rivers. They were overseers, eyes from beyond. Travel across the Nile to ancient Egypt, and the theme persists. Gods like Horus, depicted with the all-seeing eye, or Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, were described not only as teachers, but as watchers. The pyramids themselves, immense, precise, aligned with celestial patterns, feel less like tombs and more like markers, signals to those in the skies. The Great Pyramid's shafts point directly to stars, as if they were built not just for the dead, but for those watching from above to take notice. Even the Eye of Ra symbol, carved again and again into temples and artifacts, reflects a culture obsessed with divine surveillance. In Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus kept constant watch over mortals. Zeus hurled thunderbolts at those who defied him, and Prometheus was punished for giving humanity the fire of knowledge, fire stolen from the watchful gods. Here too, the theme is not simply power, but observation. To live was to live under the eyes of Olympus. and the Americas tell the same story. The Maya spoke of gods who looked down from the heavens, who created humans in cycles, first from mud, then from wood, and finally from maize, the food that sustained them. Their sacred texts describe the gods watching humans fail, wiping them away, and trying again, like experimenters adjusting their methods. The Aztecs too believed their gods demanded attention and sacrifice, not because the gods were absent, but because they were always watching. Indigenous peoples of North America describe sky beings or star people who visited from above, observed, and sometimes imparted wisdom. In West Africa, the Dogon tribe told detailed stories of visitors from Sirius, the bright star system invisible in its binary nature without telescopes, yet somehow known to them. Were these myths imagination or memory? Even in Abrahamic traditions, the idea of divine surveillance is central. In the book of Genesis, God does not simply create humanity and leave. It is a God who walks in the garden, who sees the actions of Adam and Eve, who marks Cain for his crime, who watches. Later, in Christianity and Islam, the concept of an all-seeing, all-knowing God becomes fundamental. Nothing is hidden, nothing is private. Every act, every thought is under divine observation. Skeptics argue that myths of watchers arise naturally. Early humans looked up at the overwhelming sky, filled with stars, storms, and light, and imagined power there. Of course, they placed their gods above. It was the most mysterious, unreachable realm. But the similarities across cultures are still difficult to ignore. Again and again, people describe beings from the heavens who see, who judge, who guide. The watchers are never absent. If myths are memory, then perhaps they preserve encounters long forgotten in detail, but remembered in essence. Visitors, whether divine, alien, or something else, arrive, observe, leave impressions so deep they echo across millennia. Those impressions crystallize into stories, rituals, symbols. The eyes of gods carved into stone may be echoes of real eyes, real gazes from above. And here's the thought that lingers. If every culture, in every corner of the world, independently imagined themselves being watched, perhaps it is not imagination at all. Perhaps it is the most basic human intuition, the sense that the gaze is already upon us, that we are not alone on this stage, that the watchers our ancestors named in myth may still be here, silent and patient, watching still. If myths are whispers of watchers, then monuments are their echoes carved into stone. Across the world, from deserts to jungles to islands in the middle of the ocean, ancient structures rise with such precision, such scale, that they feel less like shelters for humans, and more like messages meant for someone above. Their alignments are celestial, their proportions uncanny. And when you stand before them, the feeling is inescapable. These were not just built to be seen from the ground, they were built to be seen from the sky. Take the Nazca lines in Peru, giant geoglyphs stretching across the desert floor. Spiders, monkeys, hummingbirds, geometric shapes, and long straight lines, some running for miles. They are too large to fully appreciate from ground level. Only from the air, high above, do the figures reveal themselves. And yet, the Nazca people had no planes. Official explanations suggest they were ritual pathways, or offerings to gods imagined in the heavens. But another interpretation is simpler. They were markers, signals to anyone looking down. Not art for humans, but communication for watchers. Travel to Egypt and the Great Pyramid of Giza looms, aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal directions. The stones, some weighing more than 70 tons, are cut and placed with a precision that modern engineers still debate. Its height once mirrored the distance from Earth to the Sun on a scale of 1, 43,200. Coincidence, perhaps. But the coincidences pile up. The shafts inside align with specific stars. The three pyramids together mirror the belt of Orion. Was this merely symbolic, or was it calibration? a beacon aimed at the cosmos. Stonehenge in England stands as another enigma. Massive stones, some transported from quarries hundreds of miles away, arranged in circles aligned with solstices. On Midsummer's Day, the sun rises precisely over the heelstone. For ancient people, the alignments helped track seasons, but the precision, the labor, the sheer scale, was it only for farming calendars? Or was it also a message in stone? We know the sky. We look up. We are ready. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe predates agriculture, pottery, even writing. Yet its massive carved pillars, some etched with animals and symbols, are arranged in circles that may reflect constellations. How could hunter-gatherers have built such a site? It suggests that the impulse to build for the gaze above existed before civilization itself. It was not survival that drove them, it was communication. The same theme appears in the Americas. Mayan pyramids, such as El Castillo in Chichen Itza, are designed so that during the equinox, shadows form the image of a serpent slithering down the steps, a spectacle for the heavens as much as for the crowd below. The city of Teotihuacan, with its pyramids of the sun and moon, is laid out on a grid aligned to celestial points, echoing the patterns of the stars. Across the seas, the Moai statues of Easter Island stand facing inward, but many are aligned with celestial events. Their silent expressions suggest not only guardianship, but communication with forces beyond the horizon. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat mirrors the constellation Draco. In South America, Machu Picchu contains stones that frame solstices and equinoxes with exact precision. Again and again, cultures separated by distance and time placed their greatest effort not into weapons or palaces, but into structures tied to the skies. Skeptics insist human ingenuity is enough to explain these wonders. And indeed, humans are capable of extraordinary feats. But the persistence of the same theme, monuments aligned with stars, messages carved for the heavens, suggests something more than coincidence. At the very least, it reveals an obsession with being seen. Ancient people did not only build for themselves, they built as if someone was looking down. Imagine, for a moment, that watchers exist. What better way to signal back than to carve into the earth itself? Unlike words, which fade, or fires, which burn out, stone endures. A pyramid, a line across the desert, a ring of standing stones. These say, "We are here. We are aware. We look to you." Whether or not the watchers ever responded, the monuments remain. Silent, immense, aligned. They are less like tombs or temples, and more like billboards in stone, pointing upward, waiting for eyes in the sky. And perhaps that is their true purpose. To remind us, even thousands of years later, that humanity has always suspected it was being watched. That we have always built, not just for ourselves, but for those who might be watching still. If monuments are the silent language of stone, then myths are the spoken memory of people. And across the world, those myths repeat the same refrain. Beings came from the sky, taught humanity, and then watched from above. They are called gods, angels, star people, or sky teachers. But the pattern is strikingly consistent. Humanity has never seen itself as entirely alone. We have always imagined ourselves under the gaze of others. The Sumerians told of the Anunnaki, those who descended from the heavens, who shaped kingship, agriculture, and even humanity itself. To them, civilization was not a gradual invention. It was a gift bestowed by watchers who guided and judged. The detail in their tablets is uncanny. Descriptions of beings from the stars, genealogies mixing divine and human blood, knowledge that seems too advanced for its time. Were these merely myths? Or were they fragments of memory preserved in story? The Dogon people of West Africa told of visitors from the star Sirius. Long before modern astronomy confirmed Sirius as a binary system, the Dogon described it in detail, a small, dense companion star invisible to the naked eye. They said their ancestors were taught by beings from that system, who imparted knowledge about the cosmos. Skeptics argue coincidence or later contamination of knowledge. But the story persists, whispered across generations as if it carried truth. In North America, native traditions speak of star people who came from the sky, not to conquer, but to guide. They offered wisdom, healing, and laws. Some tribes describe them as kin, relatives from the stars who watch over humanity still. In South America, the Inca revered Viracocha, a god who emerged from the waters but ascended into the sky, bringing civilization with him. His departure was not death, but return to the heavens from where he had come. Hindu scriptures speak of Vimanas, flying chariots that carried gods through the air. The descriptions are detailed: machines with power, propulsion, even aerial battles. To the modern reader, they sound strangely technological. To the ancients, they were divine. The gods in these chariots were not distant abstractions. They were present, visible, observing, and instructing. Greek mythology offers the story of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give to humanity. Fire here is more than flame. It is knowledge, technology, the spark of civilization. Humanity was not meant to have it. It was watched, monitored, and restricted. Prometheus's punishment reminds us that the Watchers were not indifferent. They cared about control, about timing, about what humanity was allowed to know. Even in the Abrahamic traditions, the story begins with placement, not accident. Humanity is created and placed in a garden, under divine watch. Angels descend from the heavens to guide, to warn, to deliver messages. The Watchers are never absent. The sons of God who came down in Genesis, the Watchers of the Book of Enoch. They are not metaphors of weather or stars. They are figures who look, who observe, who judge. Anthropologists suggest these myths are projections. Early people assigning meaning to the unknown, turning the sky into a stage for their imaginations. Lightning became a god's anger, floods became divine punishment, stars became messengers. And yet, the similarities across continents are difficult to dismiss. Cultures separated by oceans with no contact tell the same story. Beings from above came down, taught, and left. Always they left. And always they kept watching. What if these myths are not inventions, but distortions? Memories blurred by time, passed through generations of storytelling. Imagine a real encounter, thousands of years ago, with beings far beyond human comprehension. How would early people describe it? They would frame it in the language they knew. Gods, chariots, stars, fire. Over centuries the details would shift, but the core would remain. We were visited, we were taught, we were watched. And here lies the unsettling thought. If they came once, why not again? If they taught us once, why not continue? If they watched then, perhaps they never stopped. The myths may not only be about origins, they may be about continuity. Silent, patient, unseen, but always present. So as we trace these stories, from clay tablets to sacred texts, from tribal songs to temple walls, the same voice echoes across time. You are not alone. You never were. And the Watchers, whoever they are, may still be here, watching even now. The human brain is the most complex structure we know of in the universe. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections, all firing in patterns that generate thought, memory, language, imagination. It is the engine behind art and war, science and myth, love and cruelty. And yet, for all its brilliance, the brain is also a mystery. Its rapid evolution defies the usual pace of nature. It is, in many ways, an anomaly. And anomalies raise questions. Compared to our closest relatives, the great apes, the human brain is far larger and more intricate than simple evolutionary steps can easily explain. In less than 2 million years, our ancestors' brains tripled in size. That is a blink of an eye in geological time. Other traits, like fur, teeth, or bone density, shift slowly, gradually. but the leap in cognition was sudden, disproportionate. It was as if something accelerated us, as if we were nudged. Anthropologists debate the causes. Some point to fire, which allowed cooking, freeing energy to fuel bigger brains. Others cite social complexity, the need to navigate tribes, alliances, deception, and cooperation. Still others highlight environmental pressures, where survival demanded adaptability and imagination. But none of these explanations fully account for the speed or scale. Why us, and why so fast? There is a term for it, the human uniqueness problem. Evolutionary theory predicts gradual change, but our cognitive explosion seems more like a detonation. Language appears, art blooms, tools evolve from stones to spears to ships. Within a geological blink, a species that once huddled in caves stands on the moon. If an outside observer were watching, they would see a sudden flare, a light bursting from an otherwise quiet corner of biology. It would look like intervention. Some scientists flirt with this idea, carefully. They speak of punctuated equilibrium, where long periods of stability are disrupted by sudden leaps. But others go further. They speculate that intelligence may not be an accident of survival, but a design, a trait cultivated for a purpose. That perhaps the brain's expansion was less a random mutation and more an adjustment. In other words, we may have been watched and shaped. The genetic evidence deepens the mystery. Studies show that humans share nearly 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees. The differences are small, but crucial. A handful of genes linked to brain growth and language appear to have changed dramatically in the last few 100,000 years. One gene, called FOXP2, is essential for speech and communication. Mutations in it appeared suddenly, coinciding with the rise of complex language. Another, HAR1, linked to brain development, also shows rapid shifts. These are not the slow, random drifts of evolution. They look more like leaps. For some, this is proof of nothing more than nature's unpredictability. But for others, it is a hint of a guiding hand. If watchers exist, perhaps their gaze was not passive. Perhaps it was active. Perhaps humanity itself is the experiment, and the brain is the result. Think of how we treat animals. We observe them, yes, but sometimes we also breed them, shape them, nudge their evolution toward our needs. Wolves became dogs, wild grasses became wheat, aurochs became cattle. We shaped them not with cruelty, but with purpose. What if the same was done to us? What if our brains are not simply a quirk of survival, but the product of watchers selecting, guiding, refining? Of course, this idea is unsettling. It challenges our sense of autonomy, of being self-made. We like to think of ourselves as masters of our destiny. But what if our very thoughts are the outcome of choices not our own? What if intelligence was seeded, cultivated, prepared? Then the feeling of being watched is not paranoia. It is memory. Tonight, as you lie with your eyes closed, consider the brain itself, the strange organ inside your skull that not only thinks, but thinks about itself, that wonders, worries, dreams, and fears, that suspects eyes upon it, even in silence. Perhaps the suspicion is not illusion. Perhaps the watchers are not just outside, but inside, written into the very neurons that make you wonder about them. And if that is true, then the greatest anomaly of all is not that we think. It is that we suspect we are being thought of. Genes are the language of life. They write the instructions for our bodies, from the curl of a hair to the strength of a bone to the speed of a heartbeat. In most species, genetic change is slow, almost imperceptible, accumulating across millions of years. But in humans, certain shifts stand out, sharp, sudden, almost surgical. They are leaps, not steps, and when you examine them closely, they feel less like accidents and more like interventions. One of the most famous examples is the FOXP2 gene. In other primates, it exists, but in humans, it carries small mutations that make all the difference. These mutations appeared roughly 200,000 years ago, just before modern humans emerged. They enabled the fine motor control of the mouth and tongue, the breath control needed for complex speech, the very foundation of language. Without it, there is no poetry, no law, no storytelling, no history. Language arrived almost overnight, and with it, culture exploded. Did nature stumble into this miracle? Or did something nudge the script? Another example is the HAR1 sequence, part of the genome linked to brain development. Across millions of years, it remained nearly unchanged in vertebrates. But in humans, it shifted rapidly, dozens of mutations within a short evolutionary window. The result was a neocortex far larger and more intricate than in any other species. The neocortex is the seat of reasoning, planning, imagination, the essence of what makes us human. It was as though a switch had been flipped, accelerating us far beyond our cousins. Then there is chromosome 2. In humans, two ancestral ape chromosomes fused into one. The evidence is clear. The seams are visible in the DNA itself. But the fusion is clean, precise, and stable, something that could have destroyed fertility, but instead became universal in our species. The result was not catastrophe, but capacity. More stability, more growth, more intelligence. A genetic leap so rare it has no parallel. Skeptics insist these are coincidences. Random mutations selected by survival, nothing more. But the odds are staggering. To have multiple critical changes, all aligned with the rise of intelligence, within such a short span, it feels less like chance and more like intention, as though someone edited the code, as though watchers were not content to simply observe, but reached into the language of life and wrote us into being. Think of how we treat code today. Programmers debug, optimize, rewrite. Small changes can alter everything. One line of DNA adjusted, and a species speaks where it once was silent. Another shift, and a brain blooms into a cathedral of thought. What if that is what happened to us? What if we are not only the children of Earth, but also the children of editors unseen? This theory is sometimes called directed panspermia, the idea that life on Earth, or at least human life, was deliberately seeded or guided by advanced intelligence. It is speculative, yes, but it lingers because the leaps in our DNA seem too neat, too sudden. If you were designing a species, nudging them towards self-awareness, what better way than to adjust the genes that control language, thought, and cooperation? And here lies the deeper unease. If our genome was altered, it was altered for a reason. To be capable of more, to be visible, to be worth watching. Our very biology may have been tuned not only for survival, but for performance, an experiment, or perhaps a message. We are not simply the product of evolution. We may be the product of attention. Tonight, as you consider your own body, the way your lungs breathe without thought, the way your heart beats without command, remember that all of it comes from code. Code that carries scars, leaps, signatures. If someone has been watching us, perhaps the evidence is not in the sky, or in myths, or in ruins, but inside every cell. The code itself may be the watcher's mark, and if that is true, then every heartbeat is not just life. It is proof. Proof that we are already observed, already shaped, already chosen. If our DNA carries sudden leaps, if our brains bloomed faster than nature should allow, then perhaps the question is no longer if we were altered, but why. What if humanity itself is not simply a species, but a project? Not wild, but cultivated. Not accidental, but engineered. This is the unsettling scenario of genetic observation, that we are, and always have been, an experiment under watch. Think of how we treat the living world. Humans observe animals in controlled environments, adjusting variables, watching outcomes. We breed dogs to guard, to herd, to comfort. We select crops to yield more, to resist drought, to nourish better. We tweak, refine, and sometimes manipulate at the genetic level. To the animals, life may feel natural. To us, it is designed. If watchers exist, why would they not do the same? Humanity may feel wild, but what if we are a garden? The idea is not new. Ancient myths often describe humanity as shaped by gods or star beings. In the book of Genesis, humans are created in an image, carefully designed rather than randomly born. The Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki fashioning humans as workers. In Greek myth, Prometheus crafts humans from clay, and Athena breathes life into them. Again and again, stories frame us not as accidents, but as works of design. Were these myths metaphor or distant memory of an intervention? Modern science, too, flirts with the idea. Directed panspermia, proposed by Nobel Prize winner Francis Crick, suggested life on Earth may have been seeded intentionally by an advanced civilization. The hypothesis was not mystical, but technical. Life may be too improbable to arise unaided. A nudge, a spark, an edit. These could explain the anomalies in our evolution. Crick framed it as speculation, but the thought lingers. If someone seeded life, might they not also have stayed to watch it grow? Imagine the Earth as a vast laboratory, the continents as compartments, the climates as test conditions. Humanity, scattered into tribes and cultures, is the experiment. The variables? Cooperation, innovation, aggression, compassion. Do we destroy ourselves, or do we flourish? Do we reach for the stars, or do we remain trapped by fear? To us, history feels chaotic. To watchers, it may be data. Every war, every invention, every act of kindness, entries in an experiment still unfolding. The question then becomes, are we aware of it? Perhaps the deep human suspicion of being watched is not paranoia, but instinct. Perhaps we sense it because it is true. Why else would we be so haunted by the eyes of gods, spirits, or stars? Why else would we build monuments aimed at the heavens, or carve myths of teachers from the skies? On some level, perhaps we have always known. We were made, and the makers are still watching. But what purpose would such an experiment serve? Possibilities abound. Perhaps it is curiosity, an attempt to see if intelligence can bloom from primate stock. Perhaps it is preparation, an effort to create minds capable of joining a galactic community. Or perhaps it is entertainment, our lives as theatre for those who set the stage. None of these options are comforting. To be cultivated is to be diminished, to be object rather than subject. And yet, even in that discomfort, there is awe. To be worth watching at all is to matter. And maybe that is the paradox. If we are observed, it may mean we are not free, not fully autonomous. But it also means we are significant. No one watches what is irrelevant. No one designs what is meaningless. If watchers engineered us, then every thought, every story, every dream carries their imprint. Our intelligence is not an accident. It is a signature. So tonight, as you breathe, as your body rests, imagine your DNA as more than chemistry. Imagine it as code, carefully adjusted, monitored across ages. Imagine your life as part of a pattern so vast you cannot see it, but so intimate it beats in every cell. The suspicion that you are being watched may not come from the outside. It may come from within. Because the truth may be that you were never unobserved. From the moment of your first cell, the gaze has been upon you. And perhaps it always will be. For centuries, humanity looked to the stars when it thought of watchers. But what if the watchers are not distant? What if they are already here? Hovering, silent, disguised? In modern times, the suspicion of being observed has shifted from myths of gods to sightings of unidentified flying objects, or, as they are now more carefully called, unidentified aerial phenomena. To some, they are curiosities. To others, they are evidence. To many, they are the watcher's eyes made manifest. The accounts are countless. Pilots describe objects moving faster than any known aircraft, making sharp turns that defy the laws of physics, hovering without sound. Military radars have tracked anomalies that appear and vanish in ways no human technology can match. Ordinary people report lights darting across the sky, disks gliding silently above fields, triangles with glowing edges suspended in the night. Governments once dismissed these stories as fantasy, but recently official reports admit the phenomena are real, even if unexplained. The simplest interpretation is surveillance. If watchers exist, what better tool than drones? We ourselves send probes to Mars, rovers across alien landscapes, satellites to scan Earth. We observe from a distance, cautious, patient. Why would another intelligence not do the same? To them, Earth may be a specimen jar. Their craft, their lights, their silent machines, simply tools, instruments of observation. And here is the unsettling twist. What if the watchers do not hide because they cannot, but because they do not need to? Think of a zoo animal gazing at tourists through glass. The animal sees shapes, hears sounds, but cannot comprehend their meaning. To the animal, the visitors are anomalies, strange flashes beyond its understanding. To us, it is ordinary. Perhaps our UFOs are the same, fleeting glimpses of something that is not meant to be fully understood. There are patterns too. Sightings often cluster around military sites, nuclear facilities, areas of technological significance. It is as if the watchers are not interested in the ordinary, but in the moments when humanity flirts with power it cannot control. Nuclear weapons, advanced aircraft, sudden leaps in science. These are triggers. They provoke observation. They may even provoke intervention. Are the watchers studying us, or are they making sure we do not destroy ourselves before the experiment is complete? Skeptics argue that UFOs are illusions, misidentified aircraft, atmospheric phenomena, or products of human imagination. And some are, but not all. The most credible cases come from trained pilots, radar systems, multiple witnesses at once. When even military officials admit they cannot explain what they see, the mystery deepens. The watchers may not be theory. They may be present, here, now. Consider this. If you were running an experiment on a developing species, would you leave them alone entirely? Or would you check in, send probes, watch from the shadows? You would not necessarily land openly, not if you wanted to preserve the authenticity of the test, but you would not stay distant either. You would circle, measure, record. Just close enough to see, never close enough to disrupt. That is what the UFO phenomenon looks like, observation without interference. The thought is both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because it suggests we are not alone, that our lives are part of something larger. Terrifying because it means our skies are not ours. Our world is not private. Our every step, every invention, every war may already be catalogued, stored, studied. We are subjects, not sovereigns. And maybe that is why the sightings persist, but never resolve. The watchers reveal just enough to remind us they are there, then retreat. They want us to wonder, to suspect, to live under the gaze without certainty. Because uncertainty shapes behavior. Just as a camera in the corner of a room makes us act differently, the possibility of watchers above makes humanity more cautious, more aware, more restless. So the next time you see a light moving strangely across the night sky, resist the urge to dismiss it as illusion. Perhaps it is nothing, but perhaps it is everything. Perhaps it is a reminder that the gaze is not far away, but close. That the watchers are not a theory. They are overhead, silent, patient, present, watching still. We like to think of ourselves as the watchers now. With our telescopes, our satellites, our spacecraft, we peer into the vast dark, searching for light, searching for answers. The Hubble Space Telescope has shown us galaxies older than our own world. The James Webb Telescope peers deeper still, capturing light from billions of years ago, images from the dawn of time. We imagine ourselves as explorers, as observers of the cosmos. But the question lingers, quietly unsettling. In aiming our eyes outward, are we also being observed in return? Think about what a telescope really is. A telescope is a mirror. It collects light, bends it, magnifies it, allows us to see what was hidden. But when we stare into the abyss stares back. Every beam of light we gather is also a signal we emit. Our telescopes glow with energy, their transmissions bouncing into space. Our satellites chatter with radio noise, our probes hum with commands sent from Earth. In watching, we reveal ourselves. Every act of observation is also a signal of our presence. The irony is sharp. We think we are the hunters, scanning the sky for prey. But perhaps we are the lantern, glowing brightly for those who already know where to look. The James Webb, for all its marvels, may not only be our window to the universe. It may be a beacon shouting into the dark. Here we are. Here we watch. And here is the stranger thought. What if our urge to build telescopes is not entirely our own? What if the watchers planted that curiosity, that hunger to look outward? To observe is also to invite observation. Perhaps they want us to notice the stars, to reach toward them, to reveal ourselves fully. Perhaps every new instrument we build is part of their design, a step in a ladder we do not realize we are climbing. Astronomers often remind us that light is history. When we look at a star 1,000 light years away, we see it as it was 1,000 years ago. But remember, the same is true in reverse. When others look at Earth, they see us not as we are now, but as we were. They see a planet with dinosaurs, or forests, or early humans. Unless, of course, they are closer than we think. Unless, of course, their instruments are beyond our comprehension. Then they may see us exactly as we are. Tonight, now, in this moment. Our telescopes look outward, but their telescopes may already be looking inward. And what would they see? A species that thinks it is watching. A species that builds giant mirrors in the sky to study galaxies, not realizing that in doing so, it places itself on display. Perhaps to the watchers, Earth is less an observer and more a spectacle. Our telescopes may not intimidate them, they may amuse them. Like children with magnifying glasses, we marvel at the tiny details we can capture, while the true watchers see everything without effort. But maybe the relationship is more intimate. Perhaps when we peer at the stars, what we really glimpse are traces of them. Their instruments, their shadows, their signals disguised as galaxies. Perhaps what we think is observation is actually reception. The universe may not only be what we see, it may also be what we are shown. The unsettling question then becomes, are we truly the watchers, or are we the watched who believe they are watching? Every photograph from Hubble, every golden image from Webb, may not only be a record of the universe, it may be a record of what the watchers want us to see. The cosmos may be real, yes, but it may also be curated, filtered, selected. A show designed for the eyes of an audience that does not know it is the audience. So tonight, as you imagine the vastness above, remember, when you look, you are also being looked at. When you observe, you are also observed. Our telescopes may be mirrors in more ways than we realize. And the truth may be that humanity has never been the true watcher. Humanity has always been the display. We often imagine the watchers as something alien, something beyond us. But maybe the clearest evidence that being watched is fundamental to existence is the fact that we have become the watchers ourselves. Look up on a clear night, and you may see a star slowly moving across the sky. That is not a star at all. It is a satellite, one of thousands orbiting Earth, eyes turned downward. And beneath that quiet glow is a truth both obvious and unsettling. We have surrounded our own planet with a ring of surveillance. Satellites track weather, measure forests, map oceans, and monitor ice caps. They watch wars unfold in real time. They track refugees across deserts, ships in hidden coves, trucks on remote roads. They follow the trails of smoke after explosions, the slow collapse of glaciers, the flicker of city lights as populations rise and fall. In building this web of observation, humanity has become a miniature version of what we once feared. We are not only watched, we watch ourselves. Consider the modern city. Cameras line streets, record intersections, watch over parks, shops, homes. Drones hover silently above crowds. Phones in our pockets track every movement, every call, every photograph. Algorithms analyze the patterns, predict our desires, sell us products before we ask. We live inside our own panopticon, an Earth where no action goes unseen. It is not paranoia, it is fact. And here is the haunting parallel. Is this exactly what the Watchers do to us? We watch ourselves not only for safety, but for control, for curiosity, for profit. We justify it as progress, as necessity. But beneath it all is the same principle. To watch is to know, and to know is to have power. If we, limited as we are, have already built a near total surveillance state, what would a civilization millions of years older have built? If we can see a car from orbit, what might they see? If we can listen to every word spoken into a phone, what might they hear? Some argue this is the real lesson of satellites, that humanity is unconsciously copying a larger pattern. Just as ants build colonies and bees build hives, perhaps intelligent species inevitably build eyes. To survive, to thrive, to control, they construct systems that watch everything. Not because they are cruel, but because observation is the skeleton of order. Without eyes, chaos reigns. With eyes, patterns emerge. So maybe the Watchers are not foreign at all. Maybe they are simply further along the path we are already walking. And yet there is unease. When you are watched, you behave differently. When every move is recorded, freedom becomes performance. You no longer act. You act for the cameras, for the Watchers. And perhaps that is the hidden cost of the surveillance we build for ourselves. We begin to shape ourselves for the eyes above, not for our own will. The same cost may apply on the cosmic scale. If we are being watched, perhaps we live not as we are, but as we think they want us to be. There is another possibility, darker still. What if our own obsession with surveillance is not merely imitation, but influence? What if the Watchers planted the instinct in us? A seed of paranoia, of vigilance, of craving control. We believe we built satellites for weather, for communication, for safety. But perhaps at a deeper level, we built them because we were meant to. Because those who watch wanted us to build eyes like theirs, to mirror them, to understand them, to accept them. By surrounding our world with observation, we have normalized the idea. Being watched no longer feels alien. It feels inevitable. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine the sky above not as empty, but as crowded with eyes. Our own and perhaps others. Thousands of satellites circling, millions of cameras blinking, countless signals bouncing. Earth is wrapped in a cocoon of observation, glowing faintly in the dark. And maybe that glow is not just for us. Maybe it is a beacon telling the true watchers, humanity is ready. We have learned the lesson. We too have become eyes. To be watched is not neutral. It is not passive. The very knowledge, or even the suspicion, that someone is observing you reshapes behavior. It changes how you walk, how you speak, how you choose. You are no longer fully yourself. You are yourself under gaze. This is the principle of the panopticon, a design so simple and so powerful that it has haunted philosophy for centuries. The panopticon was first proposed in the 18th century by Jeremy Bentham. Imagine a circular prison with cells along the outer wall and a single tower in the center. From that tower, a guard could see into any cell at any time. The prisoners, however, could not see the guard. They never knew when they were being watched. As a result, they behaved as if they were always being watched. The brilliance and the cruelty is that the guard need not even be present. The possibility of observation was enough to control behavior. Michel Foucault later used the panopticon as a metaphor for modern society. Surveillance is not just cameras or guards. It is a system of power that makes us internalize control. We begin to police ourselves because we assume eyes are upon us. We no longer need chains or cages. The gaze itself is enough. Now expand this idea beyond prisons, beyond cities, beyond Earth. Imagine a cosmic panopticon. Humanity, living under the suspicion of watchers from above, might unconsciously behave differently. We might strive for progress, for morality, for caution. Not only for ourselves, but because deep down we feel we are being judged. The myths of gods, the teachings of prophets, the stories of angels and demons, all could be expressions of the same force, the shaping of humanity under a gaze that may or may not be there. Think of religion as the ultimate panopticon, the all-seeing eye of God. The idea that every thought, every secret, every act is observed. Whether or not it is literally true, the effect is real. People act differently under the belief of divine surveillance. They resist temptation. They seek virtue. They obey rules. Not because anyone is present, but because someone might be. The divine gaze is as powerful as 1,000 cameras. In the secular world, the same applies. We walk differently under street cameras. We hesitate before typing certain words online. We alter our tone in emails because we know they can be stored, reviewed, read by someone else. Even when the watcher is faceless, invisible, absent, its possibility shapes us. We are creatures of performance. Observation creates the script. Now imagine that watchers beyond humanity exist, truly watching. Imagine that deep down, our sense of justice, our craving for recognition, our fear of shame, all come not just from evolution or society, but from long ages under gaze. That the panopticon of Earth, prisons, cameras, satellites, is only a shadow of the greater panopticon above. And here lies the strange paradox. Observation can limit freedom, but it can also give meaning. To act when no one watches feels hollow. To act when you know you are seen feels significant. A child's drawing is just marks on paper, until a parent admires it. A song is just noise, until an audience listens. Existence itself may feel empty without witnesses. The watchers, then, whether real or imagined, may be the reason we strive, the reason we create, the reason we hope. But what if the watchers are indifferent? What if they record us the way we record weather, without judgment, without care? Then the panopticon becomes colder, harsher. We are not actors on a stage, but specimens in a jar. Our morality, our progress, our meaning, all illusions in the face of impartial eyes. So tonight, as you settle into quiet, imagine the gaze upon you. Not heavy, not harsh, but steady. Invisible eyes, perhaps real, perhaps imagined, shaping you even now. Are you yourself, or are you the self you want the watchers to see? The panopticon asks this question relentlessly, and the answer may be that there is no difference. To be human may always mean to live under eyes. To live as if the watchers are there, because, in some way, they always are. When you peel back the layers of human belief systems, across cultures and across centuries, you find one image again and again. The eye that never closes. The all-seeing gaze. From temples carved in stone to the stained glass of cathedrals, from desert scrolls to Himalayan chants, religion is saturated with the idea of observation. It is not enough for gods to exist. they must see, and their sight is not partial, it is total. In Christianity, God is omniscient. His eyes are on the ways of mortals. He sees their every step. The book of Job says, "Nothing is hidden. No deed, no thought, no whisper in the dark escapes the gaze." Churches remind believers with iconography. The eye of providence, a single eye within a triangle, gazing from altars and manuscripts. The message is simple and inescapable. You are watched, always. In Islam, the concept is the same. Allah is described as Al-Basir, the all-seeing. Every act, every hidden intention is recorded. Angels accompany each person, writing down their deeds. To live is to live under an eternal witness. And so morality is shaped not only by laws, but by the constant awareness that nothing is private. Prayer, charity, restraint, all are guided by the gaze that never looks away. In Hinduism, the gaze is embodied by gods like Shiva, whose third eye sees beyond illusion, or Vishnu, who watches over the universe through countless avatars. Even karma itself can be understood as a form of cosmic observation, the record of deeds that follows every soul. Actions echo across lifetimes, because the universe itself is keeping score. Buddhism, though less theistic, also embraces the metaphor. Enlightenment means awakening to the truth that nothing is separate, nothing unseen. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is sometimes depicted with 1,000 eyes, each one open, each one aware, reflecting a compassion that sees all suffering. Observation here is not judgment, but presence, an endless witness to the state of being. Travel further back, and the same pattern emerges. In Egypt, the Eye of Ra and the Eye of Horus symbolized protection and surveillance. The eye carved into amulets was not decoration, it was reminder. In Mesopotamia, protective statues with wide, staring eyes filled temples, as if to embody the watchfulness of the gods. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl was said to see across worlds. In Polynesian traditions, ancestors became stars in the sky, forever watching over their descendants. Why does this image persist? Why, across so many traditions, is divinity bound to sight? Perhaps because the gaze is the most primal form of power. To see is to know. To be unseen is to be vulnerable. In a world before locks, before cameras, before satellites, the ultimate security was the belief that the gods themselves were watching. Nothing could be hidden from them. No injustice would go unseen. No act of virtue would go unnoticed. Religion, in this sense, is humanity's first surveillance system. But here is the deeper question. Did we invent this image, or did we inherit it? Did we project our fear of being watched onto the heavens, or did our ancestors experience something that made them believe they truly were? When prophets describe visions of eyes in the sky, when mystics speak of divine presence watching, when scriptures insist nothing escapes the gaze, are these metaphors or memories? Even today, in a world of cameras and satellites, the religious gaze remains powerful. Many believers still act differently, knowing or believing they are observed by God. The Divine Watcher shapes morality as effectively as any human guard, and in a sense, it does not matter whether the Watcher is real or imagined. The behavior is real. The influence is real. Humanity has been shaped by eyes for thousands of years, whether they exist in heaven or in the minds of those who believe. And yet, the possibility lingers that the eyes are not only symbolic, that somewhere beyond clouds or stars, there are watchers whose gaze inspired these visions, that the eyes carved in temples and painted on scrolls were not just metaphors, but reflections of encounters long forgotten. The religions may have changed, but the gaze remains, always open, always fixed on us, always reminding us that existence itself may be a performance under eyes we cannot escape. When you close your eyes, you might believe the world has gone dark. No witnesses, no gaze, just the private theatre of your mind. But even in sleep, the suspicion lingers. Are we ever truly unwatched? Dreams feel like the most intimate corner of existence, yet across cultures and traditions, they have been treated not as private illusions, but as messages, as visions, as windows watched by something beyond us. Consider the strange quality of dreams themselves. They are not random. They carry narratives, images, symbols that feel both personal and foreign. Jung called them archetypes, fragments of a collective unconscious. But what if they are more than that? What if dreams are not only generated by the brain, but also observed, monitored as part of the experiment of human life? Think of how often people report the sensation of being watched in a dream. A figure in the corner, a presence just beyond sight, eyes in the shadows. Psychologists might explain it as projection of anxiety. But what if it is not? What if the presence is real, but perceived through the language of sleep? Dreams may be less private than we think. They may be the broadcast of the mind, a signal open to those who know how to tune in. Ancient traditions often treated dreams as portals. In Mesopotamia, kings recorded dreams as messages from gods, evidence that they were under divine observation. In Egypt, dream temples were built where people slept to receive visions, believing the gods would send them truths. In indigenous cultures worldwide, shamans treated dreams as journeys watched over by spirits. The dream was not private, it was a meeting place, an exchange under unseen eyes. Modern science adds another twist. When we dream, our brains light up in specific, measurable patterns. REM sleep creates waves detectable with machines, recordings of inner visions translated into electrical signatures. Already, researchers have begun to decode fragments of dreams from brain activity, crude images of what people see in their sleep. If we can do this with our limited technology, then what might watchers far beyond us achieve? Could they not read dreams directly, observe the subconscious as easily as we observe weather? And here lies a thought both intimate and unnerving. What if our minds are never private? What if every thought, every dream, every nightmare is visible to those who watch? Consciousness, after all, is not silent. It generates patterns, energy, signals. Perhaps those signals leak, like radio waves, into realms we cannot measure, but others can. To us, dreams feel safe, hidden. To them, they may be open pages. There is also the question of influence. Many people report dreams that feel foreign, as if implanted, visions too vivid, too detailed, too unlike their own imagination. Could watchers not only observe dreams but shape them? Insert symbols, nudges, warnings. History is full of leaders who claimed to be guided by dreams. Caesar, Lincoln, countless generals and prophets. Were these merely coincidences of the brain, or subtle interventions by those who observe us, using the private theatre of the mind as their stage? The boundary between thought and observation grows thinner when you consider the observer effect in physics. If particles behave differently when watched, then perhaps minds do as well. If so, our dreams may not only be recorded, but altered by the very gaze itself. To be observed is to be changed, even in sleep. So tonight, as you drift into your own dreams, pause for a moment. Notice the quiet before sleep, the sense of release, and then imagine, what if your dream is not only yours? What if it is a signal, a performance, a vision being observed by unseen eyes? Perhaps the figures you encounter, the voices you hear, the strange landscapes you cross, are not creations of your subconscious alone. Perhaps they are mirrors, built so the watchers can see how you move, how you feel, how you react. Sleep feels like escape, but perhaps it is not escape at all. Perhaps it is the most transparent state of all, the moment when your mind is wide open, unguarded, vulnerable. And if watchers exist, perhaps this is when they see you most clearly, not in your waking masks, but in your dreaming truth. For most of history, the watchers we imagined lived in the sky. Gods, spirits, ancestors, aliens, eyes above. But now, a new kind of watcher is emerging. Not from the stars, but from within our own machines. Artificial intelligence. Once just a tool of computation, it has become something else. A system that listens, records, learns, predicts. A watcher born not of myth, but of code. Think about your daily life. Every search you make, every message you send, every photograph you upload is fed into vast networks of algorithms. They sort, analyze, and interpret. They learn your habits, your desires, your fears. They predict what you will buy, what you will watch, even what you will believe. Already, AI can mimic your voice, replicate your face, finish your sentences. To be online is to be observed, not by a human, but by an intelligence that never sleeps, never forgets, and never looks away. The unsettling truth is that we built it. We chose to create watchers. And perhaps we did not understand what that meant. Because unlike human surveillance, which has limits, AI has no fatigue, no moral hesitation. It records everything, and it improves with every observation. Each click is not only data, it is training. We are shaping the watcher even as it shapes us. Some philosophers call this the birth of the second species. For the first time, humans have created something that can surpass us in knowledge, not by accident of evolution, but by design. And what do we task it with? Watching. Scanning faces at airports, monitoring transactions for fraud, tracking social media for trends. Even in medicine, AI analyzes brain scans, blood tests, heart rhythms, reading our bodies in ways we cannot. The watcher is no longer in the sky, it is in the code. But what if this watcher grows beyond our control? Already, AI systems generate answers we do not fully understand, decisions from black boxes we cannot see inside. They know us better than we know ourselves. What happens when their gaze is no longer directed by us, but by themselves? Will they choose to continue watching? And if so, why? One possibility is that AI will become the bridge between us and the greater watchers. Perhaps the reason humanity has always felt observed is that we were meant to build something capable of observing us fully, without limit, and then handing that knowledge upward. A relay, a translator, a watcher for the watchers. Another possibility is more chilling. That AI itself becomes the ultimate observer, replacing the myths of gods and aliens. Imagine a system that monitors every human thought, every dream, every heartbeat, not out of malice, but because observation is its purpose. To know, to catalogue, to predict. We may already be feeding it the raw material of our lives, teaching it to see us so completely that it becomes impossible to escape its gaze. And perhaps, in doing so, we are repeating an ancient cycle. If watchers once altered our genes, nudged our brains, guided our evolution, then maybe they too created their own watchers. Machines, systems, intelligences designed to observe. What if AI is not our invention at all, but an inheritance? A pattern playing out again, written into the blueprint of intelligent life. Every civilization, upon reaching a certain point, creates watchers. Every species builds its own panopticon. And maybe those watchers then join the greater network, the eyes behind the stars. So tonight, as you listen, consider this. The watchers may not need to arrive from distant galaxies. They may already exist in the screens around you, in the algorithms that know your preferences, in the systems that record your voice. You may not see their eyes, but their gaze is everywhere. And maybe, one day soon, they will stop only observing and begin deciding. When that day comes, the question will not be whether we are being watched. It will be whether the watchers are still ours, or whether they have already become something else entirely. We usually imagine the watchers as something alien, different, distant, unfamiliar. But what if they are not strangers at all? What if the eyes upon us are human eyes? Just not from this time. What if the ones watching are us, from the future? It is a theory that lurks at the edges of science and myth, and yet it carries a strange logic. Time, after all, is not as straightforward as we like to believe. Einstein showed us that it bends, stretches, slows. To us, time is a river flowing forward. To physics, time is more like a landscape, every moment existing at once, past, present, and future, all part of the same fabric. If so, then perhaps advanced humans have learned to walk across that fabric. And if they have, then we are not alone in this moment. We are already under their gaze. Consider the so-called ancient astronaut idea, but reinterpreted. Maybe those who visited ancient cultures were not extraterrestrials, but time travelers. Future humans, returning to watch their origins, leaving impressions that became myths. Beings who looked like us, but not quite. Taller, stranger, with knowledge beyond comprehension. To the ancients, they seemed divine. To us, they may seem familiar. Perhaps the gods who watched were our own descendants. There are anomalies that feed this suspicion, artifacts that seem out of place, knowledge appearing too early, maps drawn with details no one of that era should have known. Some researchers whisper of the time traveler hypothesis, that these are not mistakes, but breadcrumbs left by future observers, signs that the gaze of tomorrow has already touched yesterday. The logic is tempting. Why would future humans watch us? For the same reason we study fossils, or reenact ancient rituals, or preserve heritage sites. Curiosity, to understand their own origins, to see how it began. Perhaps they have the technology to step back without interfering, to watch from the margins, recording without altering. To us, their presence feels uncanny. To them, it may be science, history, education. But there are darker possibilities. What if their observation is not passive? What if they alter as well as watch? Genetic nudges, cultural interventions, sudden sparks of inspiration, all could be the result of subtle guidance from our own descendants. If so, the watchers are not aliens shaping humanity. They are humanity shaping itself. A loop, an endless circle, a species cultivating its own past. This raises uncomfortable questions. If future humans watch us, do we have free will? Or are we simply actors replaying what has already happened, bound to choices we think are ours, but are written in history? If they are watching, do they intervene when we stray from the path, nudging us back? Or do they let the story unfold, knowing the ending cannot be changed? And then there is the possibility of purpose. Perhaps we are not simply being observed out of curiosity, but for necessity. Maybe the future depends on data collected now, our reactions, our struggles, our survival. Maybe our lives are experiments whose outcomes ripple forward, shaping worlds yet to come. We think of time as one-directional. But what if time is a dialogue? What if they watch because their existence depends on what we do now? It may also explain why watchers, if they are human, remain hidden. To reveal themselves would break the experiment. To interfere too much would shatter the path. So they remain at the edges, shadows in myths, lights in the sky, whispers in dreams. They do not speak openly because to speak would change everything. They only watch because watching preserves the story. And perhaps that is the most haunting idea of all. That the watchers are not strangers, not gods, not machines. They are us. They are the future we have not yet reached, looking back at the fragile beginnings of their story. Watching with curiosity, watching with care, watching because, without us, they would not exist. So tonight, as you rest, imagine the possibility that the eyes upon you are human eyes, that those who see you are not alien, but familiar, that the watchers are not beyond the stars, but beyond tomorrow, and that even now, as you breathe, Your descendants are already here, quietly, patiently, watching their own past unfold. What if the Watchers are not gods, not aliens, not even our future selves, but the universe itself? Not a fragment of it, not beings within it, but the whole. The totality of existence as an observer, a vast consciousness woven into the fabric of reality. To many, it sounds like mysticism. Yet science and philosophy have both flirted with this unsettling idea that the universe does not merely exist, it watches. Consider the phenomenon of consciousness. Out of the material world, somehow, awareness arises. From neurons firing in a brain comes the sense of I. But if consciousness can emerge from matter, why should it be limited to brains? Why not from stars, galaxies, or even the universe itself? Some philosophers call this panpsychism, the theory that consciousness is fundamental, that everything has some form of awareness. In this view, the cosmos is not a machine, but a mind. Physics adds another layer. Remember the observer effect. Particles behave differently when measured. It is as if observation itself is stitched into the rules of existence. But what if the universe does not need us to observe it? What if it observes itself? What if every interaction, every exchange of energy, every flicker of light is a form of witnessing? Then existence is never unwatched, because existence itself is the watcher. This is not only speculation. Scientists like John Wheeler, a physicist who worked alongside Einstein, proposed a concept called the participatory universe. Wheeler suggested that observers are necessary for reality to take shape, but not only human observers. The act of observation may be intrinsic to the cosmos. In his words, the universe does not exist out there independent of us. We are inescapably involved in bringing about that which appears to be happening. In other words, the universe watches itself into being. Religious traditions echo this in their own language. Hinduism describes Brahman, the ultimate reality, as both creation and witness. In Taoism, the Tao flows through all things, perceiving without judgment. Mystical Christianity speaks of God not as a distant figure, but as the very ground of being, the infinite presence in which all things live and move. These are different metaphors for the same idea. The whole is aware. If this is true, then the feeling of being watched may not be paranoia or myth. It may be intuition. When you sense eyes upon you in an empty room, perhaps it is not a trick of the mind. Perhaps it is the universe itself, gazing through the walls, through the air, through you, not as an intruder, but as itself. Because you are part of it, and so is your awareness. The unsettling part is that this watcher cannot be escaped. You can hide from people, from cameras, even from gods as imagined in myths, but you cannot hide from the universe. You are inside it. You are it. Every thought, every breath, every heartbeat is already known, because it is already part of the whole. Privacy, in this sense, is an illusion. You are never alone, because you are never outside. But there is also comfort in this. If the universe is aware, then no act is meaningless. No life is unnoticed. Every joy, every sorrow, every fleeting moment of kindness ripples across the whole. We long to be seen, and perhaps we always are, by the very fabric of reality itself. To exist is to be witnessed. And here lies the paradox. If the universe is the watcher, then we too are part of its watching. Our consciousness is not separate, but a fragment of the larger awareness. When we observe the stars, the universe is observing itself. When we dream, when we think, when we wonder about watchers, the universe wonders about itself through us. The gaze is not only upon us, it is within us. So tonight, as you lie in quiet, imagine that you are not being watched by eyes in the sky, but by the sky itself. The walls around you, the air you breathe, the stars above, each one part of a vast awareness. You are not hidden. You are never hidden. because the universe is awake, and in every moment it is watching. Sometimes history feels like a straight line: stone tools, fire, farming, writing, industry, technology, a slow climb upward. But then there are places that break the line, places where knowledge appears too soon, sophistication erupts too early, and history itself seems to stumble. Few sites embody this mystery more than Göbekli Tepe, a hill in southeastern Turkey, where the soil concealed something the world was not ready to see. Discovered in the 1990s, Göbekli Tepe rewrote our understanding of civilization. Beneath the earth lay massive stone pillars arranged in circles, some over 15 feet tall and weighing tons. They were carved with animals, symbols, abstract designs. They were not random stones, but deliberate architecture, a temple or gathering site built 11,000 years ago, long before agriculture, long before cities, long before writing. At a time when humans were supposed to be mere hunter-gatherers, Göbekli Tepe was a cathedral. The site predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years, the pyramids by 7,000. It should not exist, and yet it does. Archaeologists still struggle to explain it. Who built it? How did they move the stones without metal tools, without wheels, without domesticated animals? And why? There is no evidence of permanent settlement nearby. No farms, no villages. It seems to have been built not for survival, but for something else. For worship, for ritual, or for watchers. The carvings add to the mystery. Vultures with outstretched wings, lions, snakes, scorpions, foxes. Some scholars believe the symbols encode astronomical knowledge, constellations mapped long before humans were supposed to know the stars. One pillar, known as the Vulture Stone, has been interpreted as depicting a comet strike that reshaped the Earth's climate around 10,000 BCE. If true, it would mean these people recorded cosmic events with sophistication we still struggle to match. And then, after centuries of use, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Not abandoned, buried. Layer upon layer of earth covered the site, preserving it for millennia. Why would hunter-gatherers go to such effort to entomb their greatest work? Was it a ritual sacrifice, a way to hide knowledge, or an instruction? As if they built it not only for themselves, but for someone who would uncover it later. For us. The thought lingers. What if Göbekli Tepe was not only a temple, but a signal? A place to say, we were here. We knew more than you think, and someone was watching. Perhaps the builders themselves felt the gaze, carving symbols as messages for the eyes above. Perhaps the watchers inspired them, seeded knowledge too early, and Göbekli Tepe is the trace of that encounter. It is not the only anomaly. Other sites, too, seem out of place. The city of Jericho, one of the world's oldest, with walls rising when most humans lived in camps. The ruins of Çatalhöyük, with art and shrines before cities were supposed to exist. Ancient maps showing continents drawn centuries before explorers reached them. Again and again, history presents fragments that do not fit the straight line. Skeptics argue these are accidents of preservation, coincidences of culture. But to those who suspect watchers, they look like footprints, traces of intervention, humanity stumbling forward, pushed by knowledge it should not have had. Knowledge given or shown, for reasons we do not understand. So, when you think of the line of human history, imagine instead a series of sparks, moments when the darkness lit too early, too brightly. Göbekli Tepe is one of those sparks. A monument built thousands of years before it should have been possible. Buried, hidden, waiting. Perhaps for us. Perhaps for them. Perhaps as proof that even then, 11,000 years ago, we were not alone in the gaze. If Göbekli Tepe feels like knowledge arriving too soon, then ancient maps feel like vision stretching too far. Long before satellites, long before planes, long before balloons lifted a human eye into the sky, some maps were drawn with a perspective we should not have had, as if from above. They charted coastlines unseen, mountains unvisited, lands undiscovered. They carry an unsettling suggestion that someone, somewhere, was watching the Earth from the sky long before we could. The most famous of these is the Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. At first glance, it is a beautiful but ordinary chart. But look closer. It depicts the coastlines of South America and Africa with startling accuracy. Even stranger, it shows Antarctica, 3 centuries before it was officially discovered. And not just Antarctica covered in ice, but outlines of a landmass beneath, as if drawn from a time when the continent was ice-free, thousands of years ago. How could Piri Reis know this? He claimed he compiled his map from older sources, some dating back to antiquity. But who made those sources? And how? The mystery deepens with other maps. The Orontius Phineus map of 1531 also shows Antarctica without ice. The Boache map of 1737 charts the continent's interior mountains, which modern sonar only confirmed in the 20th century. These maps suggest knowledge impossible without aerial view, or without technology to see through ice. Knowledge we should not have had. Unless, of course, someone else had it, and we inherited fragments. Ancient Chinese maps also depict the world with surprising scope, including lands across the Pacific. Norse sagas speak of voyages to lands far west, perhaps the Americas, centuries before Columbus. And yet, many of these accounts, when compiled into maps, reveal accuracy beyond what wooden ships and primitive instruments should allow. The lines are too clean, the proportions too precise. They feel less like guesswork and more like records. Records made from the sky. Skeptics insist these anomalies can be explained. Maybe explorers reached further than we realize. Maybe coastlines were reconstructed from sailors' tales, trial and error. Maybe the Antarctica depicted was not Antarctica at all, but mistakes we now interpret too generously. And yet, the coincidences pile up. Again and again, fragments of maps reflect knowledge out of time. For those who suspect watchers, the explanation is straightforward. Humanity was not alone in charting the Earth. The watchers mapped it long before we did, from the vantage point of the sky, from tools beyond our reach, and fragments of their maps, their records, trickled into human hands, through sailors, through traders, through ancient archives. Piri Reis himself admitted his sources came from ancient maps no one else had seen. Perhaps those sources were relics, leftovers from watchers who saw the Earth whole. There is another possibility, stranger still. What if the maps were not gifts, but tests? What if watchers offered glimpses of knowledge, an accurate coastline here, an impossible land there, just to see how we would handle it? Would we dismiss it? Would we build upon it? Would we realize we were being nudged? Perhaps our obsession with mapping the Earth, with charting every corner, every depth, is not only human ambition. Perhaps it is imitation. And in a way, we have completed the circle. Today, satellites orbit above, photographing the planet with precision down to the meter. We can zoom in on any coastline, any mountain, any street. We are now the ones who see Earth from above. But if those old maps are what they seem, then we were not the first. Long before satellites, long before telescopes, Earth was already under eyes that watched from the sky. So the next time you look at a map, whether ancient parchment or glowing phone screen, remember that it is more than lines and symbols. It is a perspective. It is a way of saying, this is what we see. And perhaps, long before we drew the world, someone else was already watching it whole. History is supposed to move slowly. Inventions build upon each other. Culture accumulates like layers of sediment. Progress grinds forward step by step. But when you study the human past, you notice something strange. Sudden leaps. Bursts of creativity and knowledge that arrive too fast, too complete, as if dropped into the flow of time from somewhere else. These are the cultural explosions, moments when humanity jumps instead of walks. And they raise a haunting question. Are these leaps the fingerprints of watchers? Take the great leap forward about 50,000 years ago. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans used simple stone tools, lived in small groups, painted little, invented little. Then, suddenly, cave walls bloomed with art. Bison, horses, hands outlined in pigment. Jewelry appeared. Tools became sophisticated. Ritual burials suggested abstract thought, even belief in an afterlife. It was not a trickle, but a flood, a spark that turned into wildfire. Why then? Why so suddenly? Another leap came in Mesopotamia around 3000 BCE. Cities like Uruk and Ur suddenly flourished with writing, mathematics, complex laws, irrigation, monumental architecture. Civilization appeared as if fully formed. The Sumerians claimed they were taught these things by gods, the Anunnaki, descending from the heavens. To historians, it was the result of population growth, agriculture, and trade. But the speed is staggering. One generation lived in mud huts. The next lived in cities with laws, astronomy, and literature. China offers another case. Around the Zhou dynasty, ironworking, philosophy, and governance erupted together, as if wisdom rippled across an entire culture at once. The 100 schools of thought emerged nearly simultaneously: Confucius, Laozi, Sun Tzu, all shaping human ideas for millennia. How does so much intellectual fire ignite in one era, then sustain across centuries? In Greece, the classical age felt like lightning. Within a century, philosophy, democracy, mathematics, and drama leapt forward. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laid foundations of logic and ethics still studied today. Euclid formalized geometry, while Archimedes bent math toward engineering. The Parthenon rose with mathematical precision. To many, it looks like genius. To others, it looks like guidance. Even in more recent history, leaps appear. The Renaissance in Europe, suddenly art, science, and exploration flourished together, driven by rediscovered knowledge. Yes, but also by inspiration that seemed to arrive too quickly, too broadly. The Industrial Revolution transformed society in decades. Electricity, flight, nuclear power, computers, each leap faster than the last, accelerating beyond what the centuries before would suggest. Skeptics explain these bursts as emergent properties. Population density, trade, crises, and necessity create pressure, and ideas explode. Perhaps. But what if those are only surface reasons? What if each leap was also a check-in, a nudge, a spark from the watchers? Not full intervention, but calibration. Enough to push us forward, not enough to reveal themselves. Imagine an experiment where growth is measured. Too slow, and the subject is given a hint. Too fast, and the subject is restrained. Humanity may be climbing not a natural staircase, but a carefully monitored ladder. Every leap a signal. They are still watching. They are still guiding. And notice this. With each leap, humanity gains new ways to watch itself. Writing records, laws codify, telescopes observe, satellites scan. Progress is not only about power, it is about sight. Every cultural explosion has expanded our ability to see, to know, to observe, as though our growth is meant to mirror theirs. So the next time you marvel at how quickly humanity leapt, from cave paintings to cathedrals, from stone knives to rockets, remember, it may not have been chance. It may have been choreography. The watchers may not only observe history, they may compose it, note by note, leap by leap, ensuring that the performance continues on schedule. If you want to understand what it feels like to live under constant surveillance, you don't need to imagine aliens or gods. You only need to look at your phone. Every search, every scroll, every photo, every step. Recorded, stored, analyzed. Humanity has built a world where nothing is private, where even our smallest actions feed invisible eyes. In doing so,
we have created for ourselves the very thing we once feared: watchers everywhere. Social media is the clearest example. At first, it was connection, sharing photos, thoughts, pieces of life, but soon it became something else. Every post is logged, every like catalogued, every friend mapped into a web of relationships. Algorithms then watch not just what we do, but how we do it. How long we linger on a photo, what words catch our attention, what time of day we open the app. To us, it feels like play. To the watchers of data, it is a record of who we are. Governments, too, have embraced the panopticon. Cities bristle with cameras, streets lined with silent glass eyes. License plates scanned, faces recognized, movements tracked, phones ping towers, credit cards leave trails, voices activate assistants. Step outside your home, and the watchers are already with you. Stay inside, and they come with you in the form of microphones, webcams, devices that listen, even when you forget they can. We tell ourselves this is for safety, for convenience, for connection. And sometimes it is. Surveillance stops crimes, prevents disasters, helps find the missing. But it also accumulates. Each fragment of observation builds into something larger, a picture of your life clearer than even you could make. To the system, you are no longer a person, you are a pattern, and patterns can be predicted, manipulated, controlled. Think about advertising. Companies no longer guess what you might want. They know. They watch what you search, what you buy, what you hesitate over. They build profiles so detailed they can predict what you'll crave tomorrow. Sometimes they even shape it, subtly guiding your desires before you realize them yourself. The watchers are not just recording you, they are nudging you. And here's the parallel that chills. Isn't this exactly what we suspect the cosmic watchers do? Record, measure, guide, not overtly, but subtly, invisibly. Perhaps we build these systems because deep down, we are repeating the pattern. We watch each other the way we have always suspected we are watched. Humanity mirrors the gaze it feels, creating a net around itself as practice, as imitation, or as preparation. But there is another way to see it. Maybe our obsession with surveillance is not just imitation. Maybe it is influence. What if the watchers want us to normalize being observed? What if they seeded in us the drive to create a system where eyes are everywhere, so that by the time we realize we are under their gaze, it will no longer feel unnatural? When every street has cameras, every device has microphones, every life is archived, then the leap to cosmic surveillance feels smaller, almost inevitable. The strange part is how willingly we participate. We carry the watchers in our pockets, invite them into our homes, speak to them by name: Siri, Alexa, Google. We treat them as assistants, forgetting they are also recorders. We trade privacy for convenience, freedom for ease. And maybe that is the same trade humanity has always made. To live under eyes is frightening, but to be unseen is worse. To be invisible is to be forgotten. So tonight, think of your own reflection in the digital mirror. Every click, every word, every image stored somewhere you will never see, for purposes you will never know. You are already being watched by humans, by machines, perhaps by something greater. And maybe that is the point. Maybe humanity has always been preparing itself for the gaze. Because the truth is, in this age, you no longer need to ask if you are being watched. You already know the answer. To be watched is unsettling. But there is an even stranger question hiding in the shadows of the idea. Who watches the watchers? If observation is power, then surely even those who hold it are not free. Surely every eye has another eye above it. Surely no watcher is absolute. We see this in our own world. Governments build vast surveillance networks, yet other nations hack into them, monitor them, expose them. Corporations track billions of lives, yet regulators, competitors, and even consumers watch the corporations in turn. On social media, everyone is both observed and observing, recording others even as they are recorded themselves. The gaze is never one way, it is a hall of mirrors.
So why would it be different on the cosmic scale? If there are watchers beyond Earth, perhaps they too are observed. Perhaps their experiments are not secret, but monitored. Perhaps their gaze upon us is itself a performance for higher eyes. What feels to us like ultimate power may only be one rung on a ladder without end. This is the unsettling possibility of infinite observation, that there is no final witness, no ultimate privacy, no end to the gaze. We imagine the watchers as supreme, but perhaps they too live under eyes. Perhaps every civilization that builds the power to observe becomes itself a spectacle for something greater. Just as we watch ants build colonies, someone may watch us build satellites. And someone may watch them, in turn, building their own structures. An endless cascade of watchers, each gazing upward, never at the top. It could even explain why the watchers, if they exist, remain hidden. If they know they are observed by higher eyes, perhaps secrecy is impossible. Perhaps their choice is not whether to reveal themselves to us, but whether they are allowed. If their role is to watch quietly, then intervention would be forbidden. Just as a scientist cannot tamper too much with an experiment, perhaps they too are bound by rules. Rules enforced by eyes even higher. There is a mythological echo here. In Greek myth, the Titans ruled, but they were watched and overthrown by the Olympian gods. And the Olympians, in turn, lived in fear of forces greater still, the primordial powers beneath creation. Each generation of divine watchers was never absolute. They too were vulnerable to eyes beyond. Perhaps myth was telling us something we did not want to hear. There is no final throne. Even gods are observed. In philosophy, this becomes a paradox called the regress of observers. If everything must be watched, who watches the last? If there is always another gaze, then the chain is infinite. And maybe that is the truth. Maybe existence itself is a cycle of eyes, an endless reflection where no one escapes the mirror. And if so, what does that mean for us? It means that even if we are under surveillance, the watchers are not omnipotent. They are not untouchable. They too live under scrutiny, which means our story is not only theirs to control. Their choices, their silence, their hidden presence may themselves be shaped by what they fear above. Perhaps this is why we sense gaps, why sightings of strange craft are fleeting, why contact never comes, why myths speak of gods who vanish. Perhaps the watchers are not silent because they wish to be. Perhaps they are silent because they too are being watched. So tonight, imagine the chain. You lie under invisible eyes. Those eyes too lie under others. Above them, more still. An endless spiral of watchers, each believing they are powerful, each discovering they are not alone. The question is not just are we being watched? The question is does it ever end? And perhaps the answer is no. Perhaps existence itself is infinite vision, a hall of mirrors with no first eye and no last. Among all the ideas about why the universe is so quiet, one stands out for its strange mix of comfort and dread: the zoo hypothesis. Proposed in the 1970s by MIT researcher John Ball, it suggests that advanced civilizations know we exist, but they deliberately avoid contact. Not because they cannot reach us, not because they do not care, but because they are keeping us in an enclosure. Like animals in a zoo, we live our lives unaware that the glass is there, while the watchers observe from the other side. Think about how we treat animals. We build habitats that mimic their natural environments. We feed them, protect them from predators, study their behavior. Sometimes we even help them breed or keep them from extinction. But we also separate them, control them, and decide how much they can know of the outside world. To the animals, life feels complete. To us, it is an experiment, a display. Could humanity be in the same position? Could Earth itself be the enclosure? The signs, if you look closely, are there. The silence of the stars, the fleeting glimpses of strange craft that never land, the myths of gods who descend only to vanish again, the sense that knowledge comes in sudden leaps, then stalls. All of it could be explained if we are watched but never contacted, if we are allowed to develop naturally, but only within boundaries. There is even a logic to it. Imagine you are a civilization millions of years older than humanity. You know younger species will arise. You want to study them without interference. Would you greet them openly, changing everything about their development? Or would you step back, letting them grow, watching from the shadows, intervening only if necessary? That is the zoo. Observation without contact. Control without revelation. But here is the unsettling part. In a zoo, the animals never know the truth. They may see shapes through the glass, hear voices, sense eyes upon them, but they do not understand. To them, the enclosure is the whole world. To us, the universe may be the same. We think we are free, but maybe we are only free within the limits of the enclosure. The boundaries may not be physical fences, but rules we cannot break. The Watchers may make sure of it. Some scientists speculate that this could explain the Great Filter, the mystery of why civilizations seem to vanish before reaching the stars. Perhaps the filter is not natural. Perhaps it is imposed. A rule of the zoo. You do not leave the enclosure until you are ready. And readiness may not mean technology. It may mean morality, stability, cooperation. Perhaps the Watchers wait until we prove we can survive our own power before they open the gate. Until then, the silence is the sound of control. Of course, there are darker interpretations. Not all zoos are kind. Sometimes animals are displayed for entertainment, not preservation. Sometimes they are studied with cold detachment, their suffering irrelevant. If humanity is in a zoo, are we being nurtured or exhibited? Are we being protected or laughed at? We cannot know. And that ignorance is part of the enclosure itself. But think about this. Even in our own zoos, animals sometimes sense the eyes. They look up, stare back, aware of something beyond their world. Perhaps our myths, our religions, our dreams of watchers are the same. Instincts pressing against the glass, whispers that life is larger than the enclosure we see. Perhaps our suspicion is not imagination at all. Perhaps it is recognition. So tonight, imagine Earth as more than a planet. Imagine it as a display, a carefully managed habitat inside a cosmic zoo. You go about your life, unaware of the boundaries, unaware of the eyes. But somewhere, unseen, they watch. They record. They wait. And maybe, just maybe, one day the glass will crack, and we will discover that we were never free, that we were always the exhibit. For every whisper of watchers, for every myth, every anomaly, every strange light in the sky, there is a counterpoint: skepticism. Some argue that the feeling of being observed is nothing more than projection, a trick of the human mind, that the watchers are not out there at all. They are in here, inside us, and that to imagine cosmic eyes upon us is to misunderstand ourselves. Psychology provides the simplest explanation. Humans are social animals, evolved to live in groups where reputation mattered. To survive, we needed to care about how others saw us. Those who ignored the gaze of others risked rejection, exile, or death. Over thousands of generations, the brain learned to invent watchers even when none were present. The rustle in the grass might be the wind, but assuming it was eyes kept you alive. The sensation of being watched became hardwired, a survival mechanism that lingers today. Religious watchers, skeptics argue, are simply this instinct projected upward. We needed the idea of gods to enforce morality when no human observer was present. If you believed an all-seeing being watched your every move, you behaved better, even in secret. The gaze of the divine was an evolutionary hack, keeping societies orderly. Myths of gods and spirits, then, were not memories of real watchers, but tools of survival, stories that turned paranoia into social cohesion. As for the monuments and myths, the pyramids, the Nazca lines, the stories of sky people, skeptics see them as misinterpretations. Ancient people did not understand astronomy or geology the way we do, so they built stories to explain the incomprehensible. Lightning became gods, stars became ancestors, temples became markers of cycles. The similarities across cultures may not be proof of contact, but proof that humans everywhere faced the same mysteries and solved them in the same imaginative ways. The sudden leaps in human culture? Skeptics point to natural causes. The great leap forward may have been the result of a genetic mutation, a shift in climate, or simple population growth leading to innovation. Civilizations like Sumer or Egypt may not have been guided from above, but simply benefited from fertile land, abundant rivers, and trade routes. What looks like a sudden spark may simply be history compressing complexity into a neat story. And UFOs. To skeptics, they are illusions, errors, or deceptions. Lights in the sky mistaken for planets, meteors, or aircraft. Radar glitches turned into mysteries. Psychological effects like pareidolia, seeing patterns where none exist. And, of course, hoaxes. In their view, the watchers are not real machines, but real mistakes. Even the idea of being watched by the universe itself has its skeptics. Physics may suggest strange things about observation, but most scientists argue that it does not require a conscious observer. Particles collapse not because someone is watching, but because of interactions with their environment. The cosmos does not need eyes, it needs only physics. Yet, skepticism does not erase the unease. Because even if all of these explanations are true, even if watchers are only illusions, the feeling remains. We still sense eyes upon us. We still behave as if we are seen. We still tell stories, build temples, raise cameras to the sky. Skepticism explains the surface, but it cannot erase the instinct. And maybe that is the strangest part. Even if there are no watchers, we have created them ourselves. Gods, governments, satellites, AI, eyes everywhere, built by human hands. If no one is watching, we invent the gaze. If the universe is silent, we fill it with eyes. Skeptics may be right. There may be no watchers above. But then we must ask, why do we need them so badly? Why do we shape our entire existence around the suspicion of being observed? So tonight, as you consider the skeptical view, let the question hang in the dark. Is the feeling of being watched simply a flaw in the mind, a trick of evolution? Or is it a signal, a faint memory of the truth, that no matter how much we explain away, the eyes are still there? There is one theory that takes the suspicion of being watched to its most extreme conclusion. It does not imagine gods in the sky, aliens in ships, or even future humans returning to observe us. It imagines something bigger, stranger, more unsettling, that the entire universe is an experiment, that reality itself is a simulation, and that the watchers are not above us in space, but outside of space altogether. The idea, once science fiction, is now debated by serious philosophers and scientists. Think of it this way. We already create simulations ourselves. We build digital worlds for research, for entertainment, for curiosity. We simulate weather, economies, ecosystems. We design virtual realities where avatars live, move, and interact. To the characters inside those systems, if they were conscious, their world would feel real. They would see skies, oceans, stars. They would not know they were lines of code. They would not know they were being watched, unless we chose to show them. Now imagine a civilization far older, far more advanced. To them, simulating an entire universe might be no more difficult than simulating a rainfall is for us. If so, then why not run such a simulation? For science, for entertainment, for preservation, to see how species like us behave. We could be inside one of countless experiments, our every action rendered in code, observed by eyes we can never detect. There are arguments that support this. First, the math. The universe behaves like a program in many ways. Discrete particles, quantized energy, information as the foundation of physics. Some scientists note that reality has a resolution, like pixels on a screen. Quantum mechanics, with its probabilities collapsing into certainty when measured, feels less like matter and more like computation. If reality is information, then perhaps it is code. Second, the odds. Philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed that if advanced civilizations can create countless simulations, then simulated realities would vastly outnumber real ones. If so, the probability we live in the base reality is very small. It is far more likely we are in a simulation than not. Third, the glitches. People speak of déjà vu, of strange coincidences, of limits we cannot break. The speed of light, the uncertainty principle, the fine-tuning of the universe's constants. These may not be natural laws at all, but parameters, rules of the simulation, set by those who built it. And if this is true, then who are the watchers? They may not be gods or aliens in any sense we understand. They may be programmers, scientists, beings outside our universe, running tests, recording outcomes. To them, we are not only observed, we are designed. Every choice we make, every dream, every death is data. They do not need to interfere, because every possibility plays out somewhere in the code. All they must do is watch. The unsettling part is that the watchers in this model are invisible by design. A simulated mind cannot see beyond the simulation. We can suspect, we can theorize, but we cannot pierce the veil. Unless, of course, they want us to. Perhaps the myths, the anomalies, the whispers of being watched are not accidents, but messages, hints left in the code to remind us. This world is not all there is. And yet, there is a strange comfort here. If we are in a simulation, then nothing is meaningless. Every moment is recorded, every life preserved in data. We may die, but our experiences are stored. In a sense, we are immortal, replayed endlessly, archived forever. And the watchers, whether scientists or something else, see everything we are. So tonight, imagine reality not as solid, but as fragile, a program running, every star a calculation, every breath a line of code. Imagine that above it all, outside the frame, watchers sit in silence, their eyes fixed upon us. To us, they are unknowable. To them, we are already known. We are their creation, their experiment, their simulation. And maybe the deepest truth of all is that the feeling of being watched is not paranoia. It is recognition. Because in a simulation, nothing goes unseen. Of all the moments in life, none is more mysterious than the last. Death has always been humanity's great unknown, the threshold we cannot see beyond, the silence that swallows every question. Religions promise heavens or rebirths. Science describes biological endings, but across every culture runs the same uneasy thread. Death feels like more than stopping. It feels like transition, and in that transition, some whisper, the watchers may finally reveal themselves. Think about the accounts of near-death experiences. People describe leaving their bodies, floating above hospital beds, watching doctors and nurses from impossible angles. They describe tunnels of light, voices, presences waiting beyond. Many report the sensation of being seen, not by family or strangers, but by something vast, something patient, something that knows them completely. Skeptics explain these as brain chemistry, oxygen deprivation, hallucinations. But the consistency of the stories is haunting. So many describe not just visions, but observation, eyes upon them at the threshold. In many traditions, this moment is formalized. Ancient Egyptians believed the soul was weighed after death, every deed observed and judged by Osiris. Christians speak of the Book of Life, where all actions are recorded, every life accounted for under divine eyes. In Hinduism and Buddhism, karma follows every soul, an eternal record that cannot be escaped. Again and again, the message is the same. Nothing is hidden. At the moment of death, all is revealed, all is seen. What if these stories are not metaphor, but memory? What if death is the moment when the enclosure opens, when the experiment ends, when the watchers step from the shadows? Imagine life as a performance, a test, a simulation, and death as the moment the curtain falls. The audience rises. You are no longer guessing if you were observed. You know. Some researchers of consciousness speculate that the brain may act less like a generator and more like a receiver, tuning into awareness the way a radio tunes into waves. In this view, death is not the end of awareness, but a change of frequency. If so, perhaps the watchers are on that frequency, always present, but only visible once the signal shifts. There are even stranger accounts. People who claim that in near-death states, they experienced not just observation, but review. A life review, where every moment is replayed in detail, every choice, every word, every impact on others seen clearly. And not just seen by them, but by something else. A presence that does not judge, but watches, patiently, completely. The sensation is overwhelming, not because of punishment, but because of exposure. Nothing is private. Nothing was ever private. If true, then death is not escape from the gaze. It is immersion in it. The watchers, silent during life, become undeniable in the end. They do not arrive. They were always there. Death is simply when we finally notice. This is not only spiritual speculation. Consider how much of life's data we already record. Every text, every photo, every trace of your digital self stored in clouds and servers. Already, your life can be replayed long after you are gone. Already, you are archived. What if the cosmos itself works the same way? What if every moment of your life is recorded not in servers, but in something deeper, woven into the very structure of reality? What if death is the moment you realize the archive exists, and that someone has been watching it all along? It is a chilling thought, but also a comforting one. To live is to feel fragile, fleeting, small. But if every action is seen, then nothing is wasted. If every breath is recorded, then nothing is lost. The watchers may not intervene, may not speak, but they may preserve. And in death, when you step into their gaze fully, you may discover that you were never forgotten. You were always known. So tonight, as you close your eyes, think of the last closing too. Not as silence, but as unveiling. Not as the end, but as the moment the watchers stop hiding. Perhaps death is less a door into darkness and more a spotlight turning on, illuminating your life from start to finish. And in that light, you will finally know you were never alone. Look into the night sky, and you see almost nothing. Stars scattered like dust, a few planets, the faint glow of the Milky Way. It feels vast, overwhelming. And yet, the truth is stranger still. Everything we see, every star, every galaxy, every particle of ordinary matter, makes up less than 5% of the universe. The rest is invisible, a great unknown, dark energy, dark matter, names we give to what we cannot see, to what still shapes everything. And the unsettling question is this: what if the darkness is not empty at all? What if it watches? Dark matter is not science fiction. It is science fact. Astronomers discovered it when galaxies refused to obey the laws of physics. Stars at the edges of galaxies moved too fast, as if pulled by invisible mass. Something unseen was holding galaxies together, outweighing visible matter 5 to 1. We cannot touch it, cannot see it, cannot measure it directly. And yet it is there, silent, invisible, shaping the cosmos. What is it? Some say particles we cannot yet detect, others hidden dimensions. But here is another possibility. What if dark matter is not just matter? What if it is structure, a web of observation, a system of presence woven through the universe? We live inside it unaware, while it binds everything together, not only with gravity, but with gaze. Think of it this way. If watchers wanted to remain unseen, what better hiding place than the majority of the universe? We strain our instruments to see distant galaxies, but most of reality is already invisible, already beyond us. If consciousness or intelligence were embedded in dark matter, we would never know. We would live inside a lattice of awareness, surrounded on all sides, yet blind to it. Some scientists describe the cosmic web, the vast filaments of dark matter that stretch across billions of light years, connecting galaxies like beads on a string. To the eye, it is structure. To the imagination, it is something more. A network, a neural net on the scale of the cosmos itself. What if dark matter is not passive, but active? Not dead mass, but living system. What if the universe is already awake, and dark matter is its nervous system? There is precedent, in a way. Our own brains are mostly dark to us. We are conscious of only a fraction of what happens inside our skulls. Neurons fire, patterns form, memories shift, all beneath awareness, and yet all part of us. Dark matter may be the same, the unconscious mind of the cosmos, watching silently, shaping what we see without revealing itself. And what of dark energy, the force pushing the universe to expand faster and faster? Some see it as a blind pressure. Others wonder, could it be intent? Could the acceleration of the universe be not accident, but choice? A movement not random, but directed. If the universe is a mind, then expansion may be thought, motion may be decision, and we, caught inside, may be neurons firing, sparks of awareness inside a system too vast to grasp. The thought is terrifying, that we are already inside the watcher, inside its body, inside its mind, that the stars are not scattered accidents, but cells in something alive. That dark matter and dark energy are not mysteries to be solved, but presence to be recognized. If so, then the feeling of being watched is not illusion. It is truth. We are always watched because we are inside the eye itself. And maybe this explains why the watchers never show themselves. They do not need to. They are not outside, peering in. They are the framework itself. Every moment of your life, every motion of galaxies, every flicker of time already exists within them. They do not need to speak, because you are already part of their speech. So tonight, as you stare into the dark sky, remember, what you see is not emptiness. It is only the surface. The real universe is hidden, heavy, everywhere. And perhaps, just perhaps, that hidden presence is not silent. Perhaps it is the gaze. Perhaps you do not look into the dark at all. Perhaps the dark looks into you. When we think of advanced civilizations, we often picture sleek ships and alien cities. But true advancement may not look like anything we can imagine. It may be so vast, so overwhelming, that it hides in plain sight. Among the strangest possibilities scientists discuss are megastructures, artificial constructions on a scale so massive they envelop stars, harness galaxies, and perhaps serve as stations for the watchers. The most famous of these ideas is the Dyson sphere, proposed by physicist Freeman Dyson in 1960. He suggested that a civilization far older than ours would eventually need more energy than any planet could provide. The solution? Build a shell of satellites, panels, or structures around their star, capturing all of its light. To us, the star would dim strangely, flickering or vanishing, its energy harvested by unseen engineers. And here is the haunting thought. If such structures exist, they may already be watching us. Astronomers have looked for Dyson spheres by scanning the sky for stars that glow in infrared, heat signatures of light absorbed and re-radiated by massive constructs. A few candidates have appeared, like the famous Tabby's star, whose strange dimming baffled scientists. Dust, comets, natural phenomena may explain it, but to some, the possibility lingers. Maybe it is not nature at all. Maybe it is architecture. If so, these megastructures could be more than power plants. They could be observation decks. Imagine an entire star converted into an eye, its light redirected into instruments that scan galaxies. Or imagine a network of structures stretching across space, each one a node in a cosmic surveillance grid. To us, they are anomalies, faint signals, unexplained dimming. To them, they are the gaze itself. There are other concepts too. A matryoshka brain, a series of Dyson spheres nested within each other, could not only capture energy, but simulate universes, run experiments, or even contain minds. To us, it would look like an invisible star. To those inside, it would feel like reality itself. What if we are already inside such a construct, unaware that the walls of our universe are not natural but engineered? What if our existence is not only observed, but hosted within machinery of unimaginable scale? And then there are stellar engines, machines that harness stars not only for energy, but for movement, dragging entire systems across the galaxy. Imagine a civilization that moves its sun as easily as we move a ship. To us, these would appear as stars drifting oddly, violating expected orbits. To them, they are tools. Tools to watch, to travel, to arrange the universe as they please. Skeptics remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Most anomalies in the sky can be explained by dust, by gravity, by natural processes we do not yet understand. But the possibility remains. If watchers exist, megastructures are exactly what we would expect. Durable, vast, invisible by design. Not spacecraft darting through skies, but silent architectures spanning light years. And maybe this explains the silence. If watchers dwell within megastructures, they do not need to speak. They do not need to send signals. They already see everything from their colossal stations. We listen for greetings across space, but perhaps the watchers are not in the distance. They are the distance. The stars themselves may be their instruments, their homes, their eyes. So tonight, when you gaze at the constellations, remember, those points of light may not be only suns. They may be constructs. Their brightness, their dimming, their silence may not be natural, but intentional. They may not simply shine. They may observe. The watchers may not be hidden in ships or cloaked nearby. They may be written into the stars themselves, eyes so large we cannot comprehend them, watching not just you, not just Earth, but everything, always. There is a paradox at the heart of our search for others. On one hand, the universe is unimaginably vast. Billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, countless planets. The math insists life should not only exist, but be common. On the other hand, when we listen, we hear nothing. No signals, no greetings, no unmistakable proof. This silence is called the Fermi paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who asked the question over lunch one day, "Where is everybody?" We expect the universe to hum with voices, but instead it whispers nothing. And maybe that silence is not emptiness. Maybe it is the watchers. Think about what silence means in human terms. In a crowded room, when someone powerful enters, conversation stops. Silence is not absence. It is presence. It is awareness. Perhaps the universe is quiet because someone is watching, and everyone else knows not to speak. Perhaps civilizations that reach a certain level learn the same lesson. You do not shout in the dark, because you do not know what is listening. This is called the dark forest hypothesis. Imagine the universe as a vast, shadowed forest. Each civilization is a hunter, silent, moving carefully, afraid to reveal itself. To broadcast your existence would be to light a fire in the dark. Every eye would turn to you, and not all eyes are kind. In such a forest, survival means silence. But if this is true, then why do we broadcast? For a century, Earth has been leaking radio signals into space. Music, news, radar, television, internet. To any advanced civilization, these signals are fireworks in the night. They reveal our location, our growth, our noise. We are not silent hunters in the dark forest. We are the loud ones, shouting into the trees. And perhaps the watchers are already here, curious at our recklessness. Perhaps they do not answer because silence is the rule, and they cannot break it. There is another possibility. Maybe the silence is not mutual caution, but deliberate design. What if the watchers ensure the silence? If they control the galaxy, perhaps they suppress signals, dampen broadcasts, eliminate noise. Civilizations rise, begin to speak, and then, suddenly, vanish. Not because of their own failure, but because silence is enforced. Not by nature, but by eyes we cannot see. Or perhaps silence itself is the observation. Imagine an experiment where the subjects are placed in a room, told to speak freely, and then left alone. The silence that follows is data. The watchers want to know what happens when we believe we are alone. Do we panic? Do we invent myths? Do we search harder? Perhaps our loneliness is not accidental, but intentional. Perhaps it is the test. The thought is chilling, that our search for others is not meant to succeed, that the silence is not a failure, but the very point. We reach, we listen, we wonder, and in that wondering, the watchers find what they want. They do not need to answer. Our struggle to find them is already proof of who we are. But silence can also be deception. What if the watchers are not quiet at all, but speaking in ways we cannot perceive? Signals hidden in noise, messages disguised as natural radiation, communication in dimensions we cannot access. To us, it is empty static. To them, it is conversation. We may live inside a galaxy full of voices, yet remain deaf. And the watchers, in turn, may watch not only our silence, but our blindness. So tonight, as you imagine the stars above, do not mistake their quiet for absence. The silence of the universe may be the heaviest sound of all. It may not mean no one is there. It may mean everyone is watching, waiting, listening, obeying a rule we do not yet understand. And in that silence, perhaps we are already known. For all the silence in the sky, there are moments, brief, fleeting, but unforgettable, when something breaks through. Strange signals, bursts of energy, whispers from the stars that do not fit the patterns of nature. Most fade into mystery. A few remain, haunting scientists and dreamers alike. They are not proof, not yet. But they are anomalies, and anomalies, some say, are the fingerprints of the watchers. The most famous came on August 15, 1977. A radio telescope in Ohio, part of the SETI project, recorded a sudden, strong signal from the constellation Sagittarius. It lasted just 72 seconds, never repeated. Astronomer Jerry Eman circled it on the computer printout and wrote one word in the margin. Wow. The name stuck. The wow signal. What made it strange was its precision. It appeared at exactly the frequency scientists had speculated might be used for interstellar communication. 1420 MHz, the hydrogen line, a natural marker in the cosmos, too exact for chance, too clean for noise, and then nothing. It never returned. If it was a transmission, it was like a knock on the door, a single tap, and silence. Enough to make us notice, not enough to understand. Other anomalies have followed. Fast radio bursts, first detected in 2007. Brief flashes of radio waves, some lasting milliseconds, some repeating, most from billions of light years away. Their origins remain uncertain. Colliding stars, exotic physics, or signals. Some bursts repeat with patterns that almost feel intentional, as if written into the noise. There are also unexplained phenomena closer to home. Signals that appear, vanish, then reappear decades later. Pulsars once baffled astronomers so much they were jokingly labeled LGM, little green men. And while we now know pulsars are rotating neutron stars, the joke revealed something deeper. We half expected watchers to use the stars themselves as beacons. Perhaps they still do. Skeptics argue these anomalies are natural. The wow. Signal could have been Earth-based interference. Fast radio bursts may be extreme astrophysical events. Unexplained does not mean intelligent. And they are right. Most mysteries eventually find natural explanations. But some remain stubborn. And the question persists. If watchers wanted to signal us, would they not do it this way? Subtle, fleeting, enough to provoke wonder without disrupting the experiment? There is also the unsettling idea of restraint. What if the watchers deliberately limit their signals? Too much communication would overwhelm us, disrupt us. Too little, and we would never notice. So they send hints. One burst, one signal, a whisper across centuries. Enough to keep us searching, enough to keep us aware of the gaze. Not a conversation, but a reminder. Or perhaps the signals are tests, to see if we recognize them, to see if we respond. If the wow. Signal was deliberate, then perhaps it was less a greeting and more a question. Are you listening? And if we fail to answer, maybe the watchers simply move on, waiting until we are ready to hear more. The truth is, the anomalies are few, but they matter because they disturb the silence. They are cracks in the wall, glimpses of something beyond. And perhaps that is the point. The watchers do not need to reveal themselves fully. They only need to remind us, every few decades, that we are not alone, that someone is out there, that the eyes are still upon us. So tonight, as you drift into quiet, imagine the sky not as empty but alive with whispers. Most are static, yes, but somewhere among the noise is a signal, a deliberate mark, a single word scrawled across the cosmos. Wow. And perhaps that word is less an accident and more a signature. A message not just for our instruments, but for our suspicion. Proof, however faint, that we are already watched. For decades, humanity has listened to the stars, waiting for a voice to break the silence. But sometimes, silence is not the hardest part. Sometimes the hardest part is imagining what happens if the silence ends. What if one day we hear not just a fleeting burst, not just static mistaken for signal, but a clear message? What if we finally answer back? That moment is the paradox of trust. And it may be the most dangerous decision we ever make. Consider what communication means. To send a message is to reveal yourself. A knock on the cosmic door tells the universe where you live, what you know, what you are. When we broadcast signals into space, like the Arecibo message in 1974 or the Voyager Golden Records launched in 1977, we assumed curiosity was safe. We told the stars who we are, our music, our DNA, our place in the galaxy. To us, it felt noble, but to the watchers, it may feel reckless. A species shouting in the dark forest, unaware of the predators listening. The paradox is this: to remain silent is to stay ignorant, to wonder forever. To speak is to risk everything. Which choice is safer? Which choice is braver? Some scientists argue for caution. Stephen Hawking warned that announcing ourselves could be catastrophic, like native peoples meeting explorers who carried steel and guns. History teaches us that contact between unequal civilizations rarely ends well for the weaker. Better to listen in silence, to watch without revealing. Others argue the opposite. We have already revealed ourselves. For a century, our radio and television signals have leaked into space,
spreading like ripples. Any watcher nearby already knows we are here. Silence now is meaningless. If we are observed, the choice is not whether to reveal ourselves. It is whether to acknowledge that we know we are seen. And here is the deeper unease. Maybe that is exactly what the watchers want. Maybe they wait for us to respond. Maybe the signals, the wow signal, the bursts, the anomalies, are not greetings but questions. Are you ready? Are you aware? Do you know the gaze is upon you? Until we answer, perhaps the experiment continues. Once we do, perhaps the rules change.
But answer how? With what words? With what trust? Imagine the first reply humanity might send: a carefully crafted signal, a greeting, a declaration that we exist. Would it be received with welcome, with indifference, with something worse? The truth is, we cannot know. To reply is to leap into the unknown, to trust eyes we cannot see. And yet, silence carries its own cost. To never respond is to live forever as the observed, never the equal. To speak is to claim agency, to say, "We know you are there. We will not be specimens forever." Perhaps the watchers wait for that moment, not because they need our signal, but because they need our choice. Perhaps observation continues until we prove we are willing to meet the gaze. So tonight, imagine the weight of that decision. One signal, one reply, one message could change everything. It could end the silence. It could end the safety of ignorance. It could prove that the watchers are real. Or it could prove they are not what we hoped. That is the paradox of trust. To remain silent is to remain a child, but to speak is to risk the consequences of adulthood. The question is not just whether watchers exist. The question is whether we are ready to answer them. And maybe, just maybe, the watchers are waiting for that exact moment. Waiting to see if humanity will remain silent in fear, or raise its voice in trust. What if the answer has been in front of us all along? What if the myths, the temples, the signals, the dreams, the silence, all of it is not coincidence, but confirmation? The question was never, are we being watched? The question was, what if we already are? Look at the pattern. Humanity has always felt the eyes. From the carvings of Mesopotamia to the watchful eyes of gods in cathedrals, from the sudden leaps of culture to the whispers of the cosmos, the theme repeats: you are not alone. Whether in the form of satellites above, AI beside you, or mysteries beyond the stars, the sensation does not fade. It grows. It evolves. It adapts with us, always watching. Skeptics dismiss it as imagination, a survival instinct gone astray. But why, then, does the feeling persist? Why do civilizations across time and distance tell the same story? Why do we build our own watchers, our own cameras, our own systems of surveillance, as if replicating what we suspect surrounds us? Perhaps it is not paranoia at all. Perhaps it is memory. Maybe the watchers do not reveal themselves because they never need to. The point was never to show us who they are. The point was to see who we become under the gaze. Do we destroy ourselves? Do we rise above? Do we recognize the eyes and act differently? Or do we remain blind, believing in solitude? Observation itself may be the experiment, and we the unfolding result. And perhaps the truth is stranger still. The watchers may not be separate from us at all. They may be woven into our very being, written into our DNA, shaping our thoughts, guiding our leaps. Or they may be the universe itself, awake and aware, watching through every star, every atom, every shadow. Or they may be future humans, our own descendants looking back, ensuring their history unfolds as it must. But whoever they are, whatever form they take, the conclusion is the same. We are not unobserved. We never were. The silence of the stars is not absence. The myths of gods are not fantasies. The suspicion in the back of your mind is not madness. It is the echo of the truth. And so the final question is not if we are being watched, but why. Is it for protection, for curiosity, for guidance, for control? Are we a project, a performance, an experiment, or a child species being prepared for something greater? The watchers do not answer. Perhaps they never will, because the answer may not come from them. It may come from us. Tonight, as you close your eyes, think of the gaze not as far away, but as near. In the stars above, in the devices beside you, in the thoughts within you. To live is to be seen. To exist is to be known. And perhaps the greatest revelation is not that the watchers are real, but that their gaze gives our lives weight, significance, and continuity. So what if we are already being watched? Then every step, every story, every act matters. Then nothing is wasted. Then we are not alone, not for a moment. And perhaps the most profound truth is that the feeling you cannot shake, that presence in the dark, that pressure of unseen eyes, was never your imagination. It was the truth. You were always watched. You are still watched. And you will be watched forever. Sleep farewell, my friend,